No? Suggesting put into him this big
Did you stop at Hampton Candy Store, John? You went to Costco with your wife on the weekend? You've been needing something? Oh, sorry.
Last report, Bob is sitting by gate 5 waiting for the shuttle to take him to Sedona.
I thought his sister was going to pick him up.
She's an hour and a half. And you know, that
That's
traffic
okay.
in Phoenix
Yeah.
is awful. Right. Take the shuttle. Yeah, well, actually,
Something else for something completely different.
well, you know what, I could be.
Okay. Oh, we're past 1:30. We were supposed to start at 1:30. We're late. Good afternoon, everyone. I will skip the PowerPoint and go right into our first presenter. Mr. John Kolkman is here. Please come forward, sir. Have a seat at the table. Mr. Kolkman, I'm going to do something very unusual. I'm not going to let you present. We've read your material. Why don't we go right into dialogue and asking questions?
Sure.
Okay, because you've gone to all this work and it's most helpful. So, Dr. Martin, any questions of this?
Well,
presenter?
several. I have one, and of course it's raised by your own, the details in your own presentation with respect to city center and Highland, and I'm curious. My colleague and I have been noodling around with maps while we read your material, and the district of Spruce Avenue, as you call it, the neighborhood of Spruce Avenue, in northeastern part of what we designated Edmonton City Center, you say is you reckon available to be moved into Edmonton, Highlands, Norwood. So let me ask you, that includes but doesn't totally include the footprint of the Royal Alex Hospital?
No, it would not include that. The Royal Alexandra Hospital is actually south of 111th Avenue, so it would not be included. But You also have to consider that, I mean, there's residential and non-residential. Like, for example, the long-term care center, the Norwood Extended Care Center, which was, you know, significantly expanded not that long ago, would actually fall within, it does fall within the Spruce Avenue neighborhood, but not the Royal Alex, which, so it would really only be north of 111th Avenue and then up to 106th Street and then up to Princess Elizabeth Avenue. It just struck me as being logical for a couple of reasons. One is that I think there is a pretty strong community of interest between the Spruce Avenue neighborhood and then the Westwood neighborhood immediately to the north. And the other reason really is to equalize populations. If you look at the population of the proposed new Highlands Norwood neighborhood, it's right just 49,995. There's about 1,725 residents in Spruce Avenue, and the city center, you know, population is 54,000. So it would equalize the populations. I think it would also create a more logical boundary to include Spruce Avenue neighborhood with the Westwood neighborhood. So-
I can see the logic of it, the mathematical part is without dispute, but then it leaves us, I'm much more interested in your arguments about a community of interest for the Spruce Avenue area, because is this not an area that has NAIT students?
Well, probably. It's very proximate to Nate.
Yeah.
Although I would say it's predominantly, you know, a residential neighborhood. There would definitely be some Nate students that would live in both Westwood and Spruce Avenue. I would suggest they live in both neighborhoods, which I think further increases the community of interest, you know, between those two particular neighborhoods. And there's then a little bit of separation because of the Kingsway Garden Mall and the Royal Alexandra Hospital. There actually is a little bit of separation between Spruce Avenue neighborhood and other neighborhoods in Edmonton City Center. It's not a really big deal, but it sort of made sense to me from several perspectives to include the Spruce Avenue neighborhood in Highlands Norwood rather than in Edmonton City Center. The other, I mean, Edmonton Highlands Norwood, despite the inclusion of the Westwood neighborhood, is still the least populous, you know, electoral division in the city of Edmonton. So I think increasing the population of it a little bit is a good idea. And then particularly when you consider that, you know, the former municipal airport lands, you know, are in Edmonton City Center. And you know, even though it's been slow to develop in many ways, within the last year or two, I think there's been more housing starts, as I understand it, in the last year or year and a half than there was, you know, in the first 6 or 7 or 8 years of development of the Blatchford neighborhood, and that's in city center. So I think we can reasonably expect, you know, with increased density in the downtown, as well as the development of Blatchford, that Edmonton City Center's population is likely to increase more rapidly than the population of Edmonton Highlands Norwood.
Thank you.
That's very helpful.
Clark.
And I think I don't have any questions. Because this is exactly the kind of stuff that's really, really helpful for us, especially those of us who don't have the good fortune to be from Edmonton. So I don't really, it's really helpful when you have someone who's from the neighborhood and community give us a sense. And then this also allows us to continue to follow a community league boundary as well, which I think is important. So yeah, that's helpful. No questions beyond a word of thanks for putting together a thoughtful submission of the year today.
Mrs. Sampson?
Thank you, and I echo that. I appreciate having it in writing, because it's not the kind of thing that you're going to do right this instant, so it'll be there when we're ready to look at that area of the map and
Right.
see what we can do. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Evans?
Yes, Mr. Folkman, would you agree
Evans.
that, based on the logic that you forward in your submissions that it would make sense in terms of the urban ridings, particularly in the city center, to get those populations to as close to 68,000 as possible, which would then allow more leeway with respect to lower populations in the rural ridings.
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking, because the very premise of my submission is that the interim map gets the seat distribution correct. And 68,000 sounds like an awfully long, high number for an urban riding. That would definitely put it, toward the 20 to 25% above average. And I think voter parity, population parity is perhaps the most important criteria for electoral divisions. I know some have called for, an additional seat for the city of Edmonton rather than a loss of seats. So I would actually say, the distribution in the interim report is correct between all these different parts of the province. But that still means, however, that there is room if somebody's got a better idea for, like, for example, Northern Alberta, with the 10 ridings in Northern Alberta, if there's a better way to draw the boundaries, I think the commission should be open to that. But I don't think the commission at this point should be adding seats to the north and taking them away from Edmonton and Calgary. I mean, that's going to throw the whole, that was kind of the job of the initial round of hearings, was to identify the correct distribution of seats.
I don't think you understood my question.
Maybe I didn't, yeah, okay.
So the population average that we're using is 54,929.
Correct.
We have a range from that, plus and minus. So the lowest end we can go is 41,198, and the highest we can go is 68,662.
Okay.
My question is, do you agree that it makes sense, based on using all the tools that we have available to us, to densify the populations in the inner city ridings? Because there's a natural absence of densification in the rural ridings.
Yeah, that's the part where you talk about the rural ridings that I'm not so sure of. I mean, I think the interim map provides 21 seats to the city of Edmonton. There is that one seat that I mentioned that extends into Parkland County, where I think the boundary should be, the city of Edmonton boundary on the west end, and it shouldn't impinge into Parkland County. But so I'm not sure I quite understand where the rural, I guess that's what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around. How does this tie into the rural seats?
It's-
Let me jump in, and then
Yeah, okay.
because we've started your presentation in a rather unorthodox way, I'm going to jump in with a story from from last week. We had someone present in Calgary, and he used the term, the riding may be outrageously large. And I said, well, can we talk about outrageously large? A proposed northern riding that we have in our interim report, I'm told, I haven't verified it by doing the math myself, but I'm told the southern boundary is closer to Montana than it is to Northwest Territories. Okay, that's outrageously large. Okay, so can you get a perspective as to how vast the north is from that little description, and why there is I would say a bipartisan cry from the north, please restore the riding you took away?
But how are you going to do that? Because you're restricted to 89 seats. How are you going to do that without, you'd have to take a riding away?
Check
either
with us on
from-
March 27th.
Pardon me?
Check with us on March 27th.
Right.
That's when we give our report.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I actually think you did a very good job with the city of Edmonton map, in my view.
But that leads to what Mr. Evans was getting to. The only way we can do that is if we do restore a riding to the north, is take advantage of the variance that we are allowed, minus 25 plus 25. And I believe Edmonton Highlands is it's about 5,000 plus below the average. So there's lots of room to grow in Edmonton Highlands.
Yeah, although there are other ridings in Edmonton, like on average, one of the things I would say to that is I would be strongly opposed to removing, a riding from the city of Edmonton.
Yeah.
Frankly, if you were going to remove a riding, I personally think it should be then from Calgary, not Edmonton, because, and especially if you stick with option A. Now, I was recommending that you go with option B,
And
not option
predominantly,
A.
the public feedback has been
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because, but even with option B, the average riding in Calgary is, according to my math, plus 2.5%, whereas in Edmonton, it's already plus 3.5%. So I don't think Edmonton I think Edmonton needs another seat, and that's why, and I'm also a bit surprised, I appreciate, I guess if you would have let me read my presentation, I would have said, I'm aware that there is this fierce, opposition to the loss of a seat, particularly in the north. I've also heard, opposition because in West Central Alberta, there's also, going to be a loss of a seat. And there, of course, are people in Edmonton who are unhappy about, even though 2 seats are being added more to the west end and the south side, they want to reinstate a seat in Edmonton, something that I don't think the numbers warrant, because then it would mean that adding a seat to Edmonton would basically put us pretty much right at the provincial average and give you no scope to have somewhat larger rural ridings. But no, I would be strongly opposed to removing a seat from Edmonton. And I also think it's just not, I appreciate the fact that there's been quite a bit of pushback, but all 5 of you signed the interim map. And I've been sort of, the whole premise of my presentation was that you need to stick with that, recognizing, that there is a lot of pushback, particularly in northern Alberta, and also acknowledging that some of these ridings are quite large in size. I'm not disputing that, but it's going to be, just because of the lack of population density, it's just going to be very, very difficult to, to not have variances that I think are excessive. I support the decision to, as painful as it was, to remove a seat, from northern Alberta, because that's what the numbers warrant. So,
Well, and just so you know, though, there are other legislative tools that we have, and we've not utilized the concept of section 15.2 ridings really at all. In fact, we reduced them. And that's another tool we could use to justify very, very, very low density ridings that are outside of that targeted range. So,
yeah, but just having said that, I would be careful, because it opens up a real can of worms, and essentially you would be repudiating, the interim report and the interim map. And
We're allowed to do that.
Yeah, we would
No
be
one
re-
else gets to,
we-
but we have,
we're allowed to change it,
Yeah.
that's no question.
It's a draft.
Yeah, well, then I think there's going to be some real pushback, because, obviously, I appreciate the fact that if you're losing a seat, the same thing happened in the last redistribution. There were, when there wasn't even an increase in the number of seats. Several rural seats were lost. There was a lot of pushback, but the commission sort of stuck to its guns. There was one person who did a minority report at that time, if I remember.
They were slavishly tied to population, which
It's
seems to be
Evans.
your focus. You're slavishly tied to population and these derivations, when in fact, and I'll quote from our report, page 12, there's been a clear trend towards greater emphasis on voter parity in Alberta, despite neither the case law, specifically the Supreme Court of Canada, nor the act historically mandating this, and that's the present legislation. So being slavishly tied to voter parity in this concept is really missing the point of what the Supreme Court of Canada stated and what our legislation states. It's one factor.
Well, I think it's the most important factor.
I understand that. I can see that from your
Yeah.
report. I mean,
Yeah,
from
and
your-
I think it's your job at this point to stick with what you agreed to in terms of the distribution of seats in the interim report. That's my view. So I think the word slavish is a rather pejorative word, I'm sorry. With all respect.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments or discussion? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kochman. Please stay, because it's always instructive to hear other
Yeah, I'll try to stay for.
other presenters. So if you're able to, please do.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren Dosh.
Afternoon panel, actually pronunciation is DAC.
Dak.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Dak.
That's okay. When I sold real estate, it was call learn DAC and start to pack.
Good.
It worked. You remember it. Anyways, thank you very much for slotting me in this afternoon. I know you're busy. So as I said, my name is Lauren Dack, and I've been a member of the legislature for Edmonton-McClung since 2015. I've been a very proud West End resident for most of my life. And before becoming an MLA, I did sell real estate in West Edmonton for 30 years, during which time I gained a very intimate and detailed knowledge of the constituency that I now represent as the MLA. To start off with, I'll say that I was pleased to see that the proposal is to rejoin two neighborhoods in my constituency, Jameson Place and Ormsby, which comprise the Willoughby Community League, back into one riding. I was rather shocked at seeing that they got separated into two different ridings, and it made for difficult representation with two MLAs representing one community league. And you go to the events, and both MLAs might be there, or one might not be there, but in the community league. But it was good to have the decision made, I think, to have the Jameson Place and Ormsby community leagues put back into one riding, as I feel that a single MLA representing all the neighborhoods which comprise a community league makes common sense. As we all know, the community leagues in both Edmonton and Calgary have a long and proud and very valuable history, and they're vital organizations serving their communities and keeping them together and unique and represented by one MLA is a smart idea. Also, kudos for adding Wedgwood Heights back into Edmonton-McClung, because it's located inside the Anthony Henday Ring Road, adjacent to other neighborhoods in the constituency, and allowing arterial roadways to bisect ridings has historically been listed as a criteria that boundary commissioners should avoid to prevent neighborhoods from feeling isolated or disconnected from the main body of a riding. So we're welcoming back Wedgwood Heights into what felt like where they belonged, inside the ring road, joined with other like geographically oriented communities. So bounded to the west by the Anthony Henday Ring Road and the North Saskatchewan River Valley to the south and the east, Edmonton-McClung is an easily identified and cohesive urban enclave which represents residents who can easily identify, because it really is geographically feeling like its own community. It's just completed that way. Now, another thing that's been proposed is the resumption of Rio Terrace, Quesnel, and Patricia Heights back into the McClung constituency. And historically, they've been a part of the McClung constituency and have also had a very notable Jewish population in those three neighborhoods, particularly Rio Terrace, because the Jewish Community Center used to be located in Rio Terrace. It was sold and redeveloped as housing, but consequently, because of the history of the Jewish Community Center in that neighborhood, a good percentage of the Jewish population of Edmonton located there. And this Jewish population of Rio Terrace, Quesnel, and Patricia Heights now has once again been reunited with the other West End Jewish population centers found in Edmonton, McClung, which are anchored by the Beth Israel Synagogue and Chabad Lubavitch Synagogue, as well as the K-6 Talmud Torah School. So this permits, in my view, a very focused representation of a majority of Edmonton's Jewish population by one MLA. It was a good move to reunite those communities, in my view. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is that the population of our city is growing, and we do need an additional seat in Edmonton, in my view. There, in my riding, are 4 surplus school sites which are being developed in my riding alone. And many individuals may think that the mature neighborhoods are not necessarily growing in population because there may not be a lot of real estate development going on, but there are other things happening, not to mention the population density that is increasing as more people share living spaces, and we have intergenerational family homes and tenant roommates trying to deal with the rising cost of living, increasing the population in a mature neighborhood. So a seat count needs to reflect the population growth in Edmonton and Calgary to maintain equitable representation. If not, a number of the ridings in Edmonton and Calgary will exceed the 25% variation before the next scheduled redistribution. So it's a short presentation, but I wanted to bring forth a couple of points and mention that I appreciate the consideration that you've given as a panel to the points I've listed, and all those have also given submissions, and I believe that the effort that you're making to be fair is duly noted and appreciated. So I stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dack. Let me start out by suggesting to you that if we were to add one more electoral division in Edmonton, you would lose some of Edmonton-McClung.
That's probable, but I'm not.
And you just
thinking-
started out by saying you're glad that we kind of restored those communities. And you've got a significant population there, but you didn't complain about the numbers in your riding. So you realize that you'd lose some.
I would think there's a potential risk of sacrifice by different ridings, depending upon where that riding got added, but certainly I'm not unaware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So be careful what you wish for, they say.
Pardon me?
Be careful what you wish for, they say.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
No, Mr. Clark, any
Yeah,
questions?
no specific questions beyond just saying thank you very much for that details on those communities, because we do try to respect community league boundaries as best we can. Not always possible, but it's just good to know that the ones that we have aligned together seem to make logical sense.
Yes.
So thanks very much for that.
Okay. Dr. Martin?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that, and thank you for pointing out bringing Rio Terrace and the like back in just seemed right. So too, by using the Henday on the southern end of your riding just makes perfect sense. I wanted to ask you though about what you might call the Misericordia campus precinct, that whole chunk up here on the north end. Are you okay with that? It has to go somewhere. Does it make sense to you from a communities of interest point of view?
To have West Meadowlark and the north of the White Mud portion.
No, not just the top hat bit.
Yeah, I represent that already. What I'm losing to the north is West Edmonton Mall and Summerlee.
Right.
And so I'm not exactly certain what the rationale was that on the minds of the panelists when they eliminated that. It may have been like a domino effect needing to balance population and so forth. So I think that the panelists have to be given the respect they deserve in terms of acknowledging that judgments have to be made to make sure the population is right. And as much as I'd love to continue representing Summerlee and West Edmonton Mall, I'm not going to squawk about that, knowing that the limitations that you work under. One thing I will mention about that, though, is that if you look at the LRT construction that's going in along there, there are 2 consecutive stops at the Misericordia and at West Edmonton Mall, and both those establishments are also joined by a pedestrian walkway across 170th Street. So there's a natural community of interest there, the major populations of commuters going to both locations, which would make sense from that standpoint to have one MLA represent, because they are a big population center of people coming to and fro with the university, with the hospital and the mall. Summerlee itself is a relatively small population. They don't really have anything except houses there to the north of West Edmonton Mall, although there is a school surplus site that is in Summerlee that might be developed into more housing. But the other thing that I'm thinking now of people who live in Summerlee, this is going to be, I think, the 3rd distribution in a row where they get to change ridings. And so that is probably something that the panel tries to avoid, so that a community doesn't feel like it's being bounced around. But that notwithstanding, I still appreciate the limitations that you work under, and if indeed it needs to be, well, it needs to be. So I think I've pointed out some of the things that I appreciated and had concerns with, and the fact that I think all in all it should be another seat in Edmonton, even though it may be injurious to my riding, but that's part of the growing process.
Okay. Ms. Sampson?
No questions. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
No questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Dack, how long does it take you
Chair.
to get to the Legislative Assembly?
Pardon me?
How long does it take you to get from your house to the Legislative Assembly?
It'll be, depending on traffic, 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you appreciate it that there's many MLAs that takes 4, 5, 6 hours.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't want you to misinterpret my earlier comments. Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, yeah.
The limitations on us to add another Edmonton seat, I think, to be realistic,
Yeah.
from where I sit, are pretty difficult. So,
Yeah. No offense taken.
but thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Samuel Gert, yes, Samuel Gertz.
It's rare that people get that last name right.
Welcome, and tell us what electoral division you are in and which ones you wanted to comment on.
I live in Edmonton, Strathcona, but I want to speak today more generally, and I want to start off the top, at the risk of being maybe overly saccharine, to express my sincere appreciation for the work of the Commission, and also the great opportunity to speak in front of my fellow citizens, both in this room and online. I don't think it's overly dramatic to say that lots of the world is facing threats to democracy. I can certainly appreciate that, and I think it's processes like this that fulfill the promises of a healthy democracy. I think it's quite essential, important that we have an independent commission like yourselves who are making these decisions. I know we haven't always had that, but I think it makes our democracy much better. And I appreciate there's a tremendous amount of pressure and considerations you all have. So I just want to express my appreciation also for this process, because this is funny. Everybody in here is contributing to our democracy in some way, and I just want to make sure that that gravity is expressed, and I want to express my gratitude to you all. I'm not going to...
Mr. Gertz, we're all proud Canadians at this
Yes.
table, and I think this process has made us even prouder. So,
I imagine. Appreciate that. I'm not going to bore you with my biography, but a little bit that might be important for my comments. I'm currently fortunate to be doing my PhD in political science at the University of Alberta. My supervisor, Dr. Jared Wesley, was the chair of the Edmonton Ward Boundaries Commission, so I do not represent him by any means, but I tried to pick his brain as much as possible on the sort of principles behind this process, however different they may be for that. I've also lived in Edmonton most of my life, besides a couple brief stints elsewhere, lived all over the city. And I also spent the summer for my research traveling Alberta to many wonderful, wonderful communities, large and small. And while those communities are wonderful, there's just something about Edmonton that I dearly adore, and I don't think there's any place quite like it. So in my comments today, I don't have particular recommendations for certain parts of the city, particular electoral districts. Like the previous speakers, I think that generally the Commission got it right, and I respect that you have limitations on potentially adding another seat to Edmonton. I think given the growth projections that were particularly well articulated by the Mayor's office, and then that I reiterated in an op-ed I had published in the Edmonton Journal alongside a dear friend, Raja McGay, in mid-December, that you could make the case for adding a seat to Edmonton, particularly because core growth seems to be sort of reversing, and now the core of Edmonton is seeing a number of housing starts intensifying. I appreciate your limitations on that front. I think that at the very least, the additional seat in Edmonton should be preserved, as well as the 2 seats in Calgary, although I have less of a perspective on the Calgary seats. And then I wanted to speak to Edmonton as a community of interest in its own right. I know you can define communities of interest in various ways. You can define them at the community league level, which I appreciate, but also at the city level. And this is particularly in response to some conversations that I've seen around sort of splicing not just the city of Edmonton, but other cities up into hybrid urban-rural ridings, which I think can do a sort of disservice to both urban and rural citizens with their own different interests and perspectives. I greatly appreciate the Commission's decision on Lethbridge. There's sort of a bizarre proposal to slice that up in a funny way, and that obviously isn't in this interim plan. And I just wanted to reiterate my support for the plan as presented. I understand that it is a draft, but I think it gets that community of interest right. And then the sort of hybrid riding on the west end with Enoch, I think generally also makes good sense. So I just wanted to reiterate that, Edmonton as a community of interest. And then I know that you're bound by legislation and case law. So the vote parity principle is not the only one that you look at. I certainly respect that. You're bound by slightly different rules. But I too am bound by rules, and that is my sort of conscience and principles I hold dear. So I wanted to reiterate my support for that as much as possible. I understand you're working within bounds, about 41,000 to 68,000. But I think it's as much as possible, if I can just urge my support for keeping vote parity. I understand the North is very tricky, but those ridings, my goodness, they're large, very geographically large, and underrepresenting certain parts of our province, citizens in Edmonton, Calgary, other cities, to slightly shrink what will continue to be a very large geographic riding doesn't quite make sense to me. I don't think that they should be underrepresented. I also don't think that they should be overrepresented, the same as I don't think that for citizens in Edmonton or Calgary or anywhere else. So I don't want to speak as just a city dweller. I just want to speak from that principle of vote parity. So those 2 points besides. I think I'll leave my comments there, and I'm happy to take questions from here. Okay. Thank you again.
Mr. Evans, any questions?
I have no questions.
Thanks, Sampson.
No, but that was an excellent presentation. If I can just say one comment, we're working on population, not vote. So everybody is represented, not just the voters. Because you use the terminology vote parity.
Yeah, I appreciate that correction. I mean population parity. Yes, thank you.
And I only do that for the general listener.
Yeah. Yes, and I appreciate that, because it shouldn't matter, whether they vote or not. Population parity. Thank you for that.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Dr. Martin?
Yes, I'd just like to follow that up really because, population is lumpy.
Yeah.
The density is different in different neighborhoods. Gosh, there are parts of Edmonton that look like suburbs, except mentally they're inside the city limits, but they're still suburbs relative to other parts that have much higher density and sort of a classic multi-story environment. Now, we haven't actually modeled anything. We had, about voter parity, but I bet you it's lumpy too. So you have to be careful about those terms. And we have to, we have to constantly remind ourselves, let alone our speakers,
Yeah.
not to mix the two concepts.
Yes, and I take that correction.
Thank you.
May I retroactively say population parity and scratch out voter parity?
Well, no, the literature says voter parity.
Yeah.
You're right on that, but we base it on population,
Right.
so nobody's wrong. You know, it's just, we're just slicing it,
Yeah,
taking
yeah.
a different slice of it.
Appreciate
Mr. Clark?
So, yeah, thank you. I'm really interested in your perspective as a student of political science, far more advanced than I ever got in political science. But, I'm curious how you would make those trade-offs between, and if you, so, you know, if we're really challenged in finding another spot, another seat for the north, and you feel like the city of Edmonton or the city of Calgary shouldn't, you know, bear the cost of that. Do you feel like there are similarities and there are differences when you're representing an area? I mean, some of the amazing statistics of geography in the north. You know, I think this Mackenzie County is something like 2.5 times the country of Belgium in size. It has like 15 or 20,000 people. You know, just sort of these almost mind-blowing kind of statistics. But then you have different areas that are rural, but maybe have a few, you know, towns or villages or even small cities. So somewhere along Highway 2, for example, in central Alberta. Do you make a distinction, and would you say that maybe there's a different way of looking at that voter or population parity? We won't choose to make you choose one of the other of those options, but you know, and also blending the concept of effective representation, in particular for those more remote communities.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is you have much more experience in political science in the practical sense. I have the maybe much less useful theoretical knowledge, but even then only arguably. In terms of the trade-off, I was struck by something I experienced this summer. So again, I traveled across Alberta to many different communities, including Fort McMurray. Fort McMurray obviously is a city, but I was struck by the way that many residents of Fort McMurray describe themselves. They describe themselves as remote. And I never quite clocked that before. Maybe other people had in just my ignorance. And I really, it stopped me sort of in my tracks. I thought, okay, I've never been this far north before. And it is different. It's obviously not rural, but it's not urban in the same way. So it matters that they feel represented effectively as a sort of remote community. And Fort McMurray has its own oddities and challenges that I can't speak to. But just to say, I have an appreciation for remote versus rural versus suburban versus urban. Remote communities are different. And as far as the trade-off, I don't know that I can say anything concrete about that. I think that's a tremendous challenge. I do know that the large geography, which is a problem all over Canada, it will probably remain a challenge for the Commission, even if you, say, have seats in the north you know, that were even less than 41,000 people per riding. It'd still be rather large. So I just don't see the sort of watering down thing as really aiding effective representation. I guess that's what I would say. I think they're going to be large either way, and that's a heck of a challenge for those people and those representatives. But I don't know if underrepresenting certain communities really helps with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, Mr. Kurtz, what's your research?
Mr. Chair.
I'm working on research concerning the Alberta sort of independence separatism movement as part of a research team, as well as American influence on Canadian political priorities.
Okay.
So not controversial at all.
Okay.
Nothing.
No hot topics there.
Bedtime reading.
The first tariff war of 1990.
Well, you know, you made a case for, as have other presenters, for another seat in Edmonton. It's not difficult to make that case.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult for us to accede to it. But I have to say, I'm not speaking for the rest of the commissioners, but having traveled the province, the times we were in Edmonton, I have found the Edmonton presenters to be the most polite, congenial, and courteous presenters in the province. So you've been very, very good to us, both first round and second round. But just to emphasize, and I didn't do the little introduction that I probably should have at the beginning, because Mr. Cokeman was here and so ready to go, so we just jumped into it. But our goal is effective representation. It's not, as you know, it's not one person, one vote. It's not rep by pop. And effective representation is an elastic concept. And I always encourage presenters to stay to hear other presenters. And I wish you could hear all of the presentations we heard. Somebody from Northern Alberta said to us last week, you know, by straining to get as close to the average population in a northern riding, you expand the boundaries and you've got more territory. That's the paradox of, we make effective representation more difficult for the northerners by doing that. So it's a paradox and it's a challenge. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, thank you so much for your presentation and for your good comments.
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Again, please remain if you can to hear other presenters. Sarah Hoffman is not here, okay? Joanne. Joanne. Joanne Sassage?
It doesn't look like it sounds like,
Saskis.
like Sam said, if you get it right, that's, you're probably related to me.
Okay, tell us where you are from and what electoral divisions you wish to comment on.
So I too want to speak about things generally, particularly around Edmonton. I live currently in Edmonton, Glenora. So I want to start by talking about when I reviewed last summer's submissions. I noticed you were asked to use population data from the Office of Statistics and Information, the OSI. Well, before I retired from government in 2015, I'm the one who built the OSI. And my job was, I was mandated actually by the Premier to develop a suite of official statistics, and in particularly an official statistic for population for exactly this kind of work. So since population...
Well, thank you for your work.
Thank you. Since population changes are integral to informing the decision-making process you're going to use, I'd like to talk primarily about population with you because I think the big story in Edmonton is population. So I have some slides.
Erin's coming.
Oh, okay, thanks. Are you Erin? Hi, Erin. Okay, thanks. So if you can go to the third slide, I guess we'll jump right into it. So I've already heard from what you said to Sam that accurate population statistics alongside consideration of emerging factors like historical factors are part of the process that you're going to be using to make electoral decisions. But I want to share 3 examples in the hopes of commission members seeing Edmonton as it is and not in an outdated way. So what I noticed last year were comments about how nice it was to get to know Edmonton. So I would like to share just a couple of facts that are relevant. So first, official population data for Edmonton, you can see on the slide, is much greater in terms of its growth than other census metropolitan areas in Alberta. And so we're growing faster than other census metropolitan areas. Secondly, I'm Métis, and my family roots go back to Fort Edmonton in the early 1800s. And for 200 plus years, I know from this history that Fort Edmonton was a regional economic hub. And long before that, it was an Indigenous gathering place. So today, it continues to be an economic and infrastructure hub for the oil and gas industry in the north, and an important health and post-secondary hub for surrounding communities. Surrounding smaller communities have long been regular users of Edmonton's infrastructure and services, but it's Edmonton who builds and maintains them, and it's not the surrounding communities who necessarily have priorities around what happens in Edmonton. They have their own priorities. Thirdly, Edmonton has a reputation now for affordable housing, and we're attracting all kinds of interprovincial migration. So I think these factors are the things that make Edmonton a community of interest for the Commission's consideration. Now I'd like to speak a little bit to Edmonton Glenora. I live in Edmonton Glenora in one of the neighborhoods called North Glenora, and I'm advocating for it to be well represented, even if it does not always vote Conservative. It seems an assumption behind combining Glenora and the Riverside constituencies is that they may be made up of stagnant older communities. And so I want to show you these two slides. So these homes are, or were, just a block or two away from where I live. They've been in our neighborhood since 1953, and until 2025, they housed single families. And there were about 48 single families that would have lived in these homes. In the space of 6 to 8 of those homes, this is what now exists. So there's 4-story apartment buildings that exist. I'm assuming you can see that somewhere else.
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
you?
we're
Okay. You're looking down. Sorry. So yes, in the space of 6 to 8 homes, we have now a 4-story, 48 2-bedroom suite, fully rented building that basically makes up the 96 voters that probably were in the 4 to 6 family homes, or sorry, the full set of family homes are now represented by this one building. And there will be 3 more buildings. So if you do the math, that's 384 plus voters in the same space where there were 96, and that will all happen this year. Do you want to ask?
Population, not voters.
They will be more population. I'm talking about, I'm assuming two adults in these places. There will be families as well. So for sure you can say population if you like. It'll be more if you use population, I suspect. I can't speak to Edmonton Riverside because I don't live there, but I know the concerns they've had about the fast pace of infill growth. These are not constituencies that are stagnating. They are housing our growing population, and our roadways carry folks from surrounding rural communities in and out each workday. So my proposal is to leave the footprint of these growing communities in Edmonton, Glenora, and Riverside as is, and add a hybrid constituency where other population growth is occurring on the outskirts. I've seen the Alberta's Calling campaign in every Canadian airport I've been in the last couple of years. The province also incentivized financially people moving, and not surprisingly, families have moved here. We did a good job, but the corollary requirement of this successful campaign is good planning. That includes considering fair representation for population that is now calling our province and Edmonton home. I want to go back to official population statistics one last time. Between 2022 and 2024, Edmonton grew by 100,000 people. That's like adding a small city. And the forecast is for continued strong upward population growth in Edmonton. I'll echo Edmonton Mayor, the Edmonton Mayor saying he recognizes the Commission does not have an easy job. In my experience, this is when you rely on official statistics. This is why you rely on official statistics, because it ensures objectivity in your decision making. In good data analysis, we look for patterns and data to explain them. I hope you're convinced that significant population growth has occurred and is continuing to occur in Edmonton. And in closing, I just want to say, I don't think there's anything, oh, it's just a thank you, sorry. Well, I want to say thank you, just like Sam did. It's always wonderful that you give time to these kinds of things, anybody who does it. In closing, I want to ask you to future-proof Edmonton population representation based on its population growth. Keeping in mind, we don't know the voting preferences of these new constituents, but they're moving here knowing what our government is, and they're moving here probably because they want to be here. And I'd like to see a seat added to Edmonton. I know this is a big ask, But it's not just reasonable, it's essential to ensure that decisions concerning the future of Edmonton as a regional hub are data-informed ones. Thanks for your time, and the best in your deliberations.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we're going to have some questions, so we'll start with Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few questions. First off, thank you for establishing OSI. That's incredibly valuable. And I think the point you made right at the end is why it's valuable.
Yes.
Because, it's interesting. We were talking earlier, just in the break, about often in past commissions, they'd spend about half of their time arguing about which census to use and back and forth. And that really hasn't been a real subject of discussion here. And so that liberates us in a lot of ways. So I just want to thank you for putting us on that path.
Appreciate that.
It's good stuff. So I just want to ask a little bit about the idea of hybrid constituencies around the edges of Edmonton. We've had some pretty strong pushback on that, and didn't include much in the way of Edmonton, really just the Edmonton West Enoch constituency.
Right.
And the primary argument we've heard is we want to be with people who are part of our community of interest. And there's a concern either that that community of interest is diluted, or that we would perhaps put groups that are not really, put an MLA in a difficult position of having to advocate for quite different perspectives. And we've had a few different examples of what that may look like. But you've argued that you think that's probably a good idea around the edges of Edmonton. I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
I've argued it's a good idea because I think you're going to, assuming this kind of review happens every 7 to 10 years, the Glenora-Riverside combination is going to have to be split. I think there's no question the population growth will be so great in these inner areas. So I'm asking you not to make a short-term decision that actually isn't in the interest of these communities in the long term. I completely agree with the arguments that are being made about why it's challenging to have a hybrid. I know the legislation now allows that, and doesn't require Edmonton and Calgary to stay within their limits. But as I said, every community around Edmonton is chock-a-block full of cars in the morning and in the afternoon. So they're coming in and they're leaving. And those communities don't support Edmonton in its priorities. They have their own priorities. And I think that's a big concern with the hybrid. So if the hybrid is truly a community that fits the needs, I think the problem with Enoch is it has, and I would say the same thing, I have concerns about the loss of the constituency in Lesser Slave Lake. Those are communities of interest. And we have a government that's going to be needing to do consultation around pipelines. You want to make sure those communities of interest feel like they're going to be heard. So I don't envy your role, and I agree with all the things that you've heard. It's why I didn't argue them again.
And that's exactly it. That's all those are all the things that we're
Struggling, yeah.
And you also, just as someone who's a data person, we also struggle a bit with lagging versus leading statistics. So,
Yes.
So the lagging statistics would tell us pretty clearly that Glenora, Riverview, the sort of more inner city Edmonton has grown in an absolute sense, but relative to other parts of Edmonton and Alberta, really haven't.
Yeah.
But what we've heard a few times is, well, that's about to change from
Well,
there
and
and
that's
others,
why
right?
that's why I showed you
Yeah.
the pictures, because
And
it
so
isn't.
that's something for us to
It isn't
consider
just.
for sure.
I think it's going to happen. Those patio homes are bulldozed or in the process of being bulldozed, and the developers' intent is to build the same. And the building that is in the place is about 4 blocks from me. It's fully rented, and it's actually rented by young kids who are friends of my children. So these are young people wanting to start in their own home community, which is wonderful. I'm sure there's lots of other people, but I know that it's already chock-a-block full.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Dr. Martin?
Thanks. Similar problem. We just want to enroll you in our dilemmas, I guess. The business of future-proofing, it's really off the limit. It's out of our scope. And as involved in statistics and census work will know, it's always a lagging
Yes.
indicator. and census people, the minute they publish a census, are immediately preparing revisions.
Yes.
This is an endless task.
Giving you constraints.
And so future-proofing sounds right, but we don't have the tools or the foreknowledge to do it, which is why, anyone can say that things are growing, but I want to see the Tyvek on the buildings before I feel that it's so imminent that I can take it seriously.
Yeah.
Now, some of the examples you gave are actually built. Again, as a commission, how are we to know how far into the future we can go into planning a riding? I mean, it gets very murky very fast.
Yeah, so I think one of the great things that has happened with the declaration of an official statistic for population is also the declaration of who is the statistic owner. And in this case, it's the demography area in Treasury Board and Finance.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that have given the data that I shared with you today. So the data isn't as old as it is in a census. And the data that they're giving you, I think it's 4.77 million.
4.888.
That's growing. That's not census data anymore. And so you do have numbers that are leading indicators in the sense of you know what direction they're headed in. And that's my point. I know from living in this city for a long time that our city did not change for a long time, and it is rapidly changing now in a good way. I'm as much as I don't like living beside the infill who's next door to me, I very much support the need for this to happen. We have schools and parks and all the infrastructure in place to welcome far more families. So we should be doing that. And we are. That's what's happening. People are coming to our city because we have affordable housing and we're building more and more housing.
Ms. Sampson?
Thank you for your presentation. That was really good. Are you still, did you say you were retired at
I am
the beginning?
retired, yeah.
You should not have.
Oh, thanks.
But what I wanted to say, and it's more of a comment, in that, we couldn't give the room that the city of Edmonton needed to grow. And yes, it's growing. Can you answer this? Do you feel it's still growing at that same fast rate that we talk about?
I think I just had, my husband had some surgery and we had a nurse in our house this morning and she said, I'm here from Montreal. So yes,
Wow.
I think people are coming
they're
here
coming.
and they're coming here because they're attracted to what we can offer. I don't necessarily know what is bringing them here, obviously, but I think for sure for families, my kids are 20-something and they talk about, their friends making choices between, food or paying the rent and stuff. So things around affordable housing are really, really important for them. And we have rental spaces now. You don't have to get into the market as a buyer necessarily, which is very hard to do. So, does that
Okay.
answer?
Yeah, it does, and
Okay.
thank you very much for that.
Mr. Tripp?
No questions. Thank
Okay.
you for your suggestions.
Okay.
So, you obviously read our report, particularly pages 15 to 17.
Yes.
And did we do okay in that regard?
I think, the great thing about using the official statistics as the basis means that it's kind of hard to argue the facts. That's the
Right.
point of having them.
Okay.
And when I was given that responsibility, it was in 2007, and it was because of an event much like this where they had population statistics coming from all over. And I think the census before that there was a 2006 census, but that data wasn't out, so they were using 2001 census. And so you had the municipal censuses trying to guide what was happening. You had Treasury Board and Finance sort of sticking with the census data and not so much doing forecasts. And so the question was, first of all, who owns this data? And that was a big part of my job, was building collaboration and relationships, because it's okay to let go, particularly for municipal affairs. That can be supplemental data, but it should not be the official data that we make decisions on the basis of.
So would you say it's reasonable, now, we're in the last round of public
Yeah.
submissions, we've got a legislative deadline, March 27, to table our report.
Yes.
Are we still on good grounds to rely on the 2021 federal census, which is updated by OIS up until July of 24?
Yes, I think that's
Best.
they are the best at doing
Okay.
what they're doing. There's some of the same people that I used to work with who are still doing that work, so I can speak to that
Good.
personally, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our next presenter, Sarah Hoffman. Is this for Sarah's presentation?
Thank you.
Ms. Hoffman, indicate the electoral division you are commenting on.
Sure, yeah.
Welcome again.
Thank you very much, Justice Miller, and to all of the commission members. I currently represent Edmonton Glenora, and I am probably going to comment mostly on the current and proposed Glenora Riverview map. I want to start by saying how grateful I am for the clearly tremendous amount of work that went into this, and how I think it's to be commended that you found a way for all 5 of you to come up with something you could live with. I imagine that means nobody's particularly excited, but that there was lots of compromise. And I appreciate that for the most part, keeping municipal boundaries intact. I can think of some examples where that isn't the case, but for the vast majority it was, and I think that that is a sound democratic principle. I wanted to bring information that shows what is happening today and what's proposed to be happening, particularly in the current riding of Edmonton Glenora, and the parts that are proposed to maintain within Glenora Riverview in terms of development. So the first document that I brought, and brought copies for all of you, is showing the priority growth areas for rezoning within the city of Edmonton. It's got the city on the top. It's about 3 or 4 page document. And you'll see that they mention 3 priority areas for growth, and 2 of those are in Edmonton Glenora, and 1 is in Edmonton Riverview today. The bottom one, University Garneau node, is proposed to go into Strathcona, but the other 2 are proposed to still be within Glenora, that being 124th Street as well as the Stony Plain and 156 corridors. And then I brought with those some maps, and you can see that a lot of it is the city planning around transit-oriented development. And I was trying to decide if I should explain my lateness by complaining about construction or traffic or my own tardiness, and the answer is all 3. It was the trifactor today. So it is very evident that there is a lot of densification happening in the core of our city, and I'm not here to argue in support or opposition to that. I am here to say that more and more people are moving into the core, particularly into the parts of Glenora that are proposed to still be in the new map with Glenora Riverview. And already I believe it's proposed to be the 3rd most populous riding in the province. And even without all of the initiatives that the municipality has launched on in the last 5 years, over the last duration of the map, we have kept up with provincial growth, and now the efforts to densify are so much greater. So yeah, thank you. Those are the those are the maps of the specific neighborhoods where they're really focusing on the densification. And I spent about 90 minutes yesterday driving around, just taking a few photos in those areas, and that's the last big stack that Aaron will pass out. So you can see that there are many 8 and 16 unit properties being built where there used to be one single detached home. You can see that there are a number of, it's mostly 8 and 16s that I really highlighted for photos, as well as some areas where there are a number of skinny houses in the middle of blocks. And there are also areas where there are going to be 6 and 8 units that are currently under construction in those areas as well. As well, there is the Charles Campsell site in Inglewood, which is in Glenora and proposed Glenora Riverview, which is the hospital that closed in the 90s and now has been converted into apartments. And it is about 60% occupied now on that same ground. They've built seniors housing. That's only at about 20% occupied right now. They're building townhouses on that same parcel of land. So there's a ton of densification happening within Inglewood, North Glenora. North Glenora, I believe, was the community where the garden suites were referred to, and that's where 16 and even more dense than that units are being built. And they're, it looks like they're all being built right now as purpose-built rentals. So it is really changing the number of people who are living in the community in an increased way. Whether you think that that's a positive or negative, I'm not here to explain, but I want to make sure that no matter where you live in the province of Alberta, that you feel like you have access to your representative and that your representative can do a good job meeting with the constituents and giving their feedback. So I think it would be unwise to have an area where there's so much intentional effort around densification be already one of the largest or most populated ridings in the province before the map even comes into play. And I know that you're not supposed to, it's hard to anticipate with certainty where we'll be in 8 years, but I can say these are all going to be on the market this spring, and it's going to be many more people even by the time the next provincial election comes around, and many more after that, given the city's intentional efforts around densification. So I'm not wanting to propose a specific neighborhood be included or removed or any of that. I'm sure that this has been a very difficult effort for all of you to date. Again, want to commend that I think you've done some really, applied some really good principles, both that were in legislation that I think others were urging you to consider, and say that I think Edmonton, particularly the more mature areas, those ridings are larger than they should be for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman.
Sure.
Let me give a bit of a perverse scenario. If you're right, and let's assume that all of Alberta continues to grow, just you've got a bit of a microcosm in the province that clearly is going to be exploding, but let's say the province continues to grow and you're saying, look, be careful, we're almost at the limit already. So you're 61, 62 right now, right?
Yeah.
Or in our proposed
Yeah.
writing.
I think today it's
If the
40.
province continues to grow, the range is going to be higher too. So we're not going to offend anything. Right?
I believe that the smallest proposed riding is it about 32, 33?
41 under, before we get to 15.2.
Yeah, so, sorry, it's 41,000 residents versus 62,000 residents?
Yes,
And-
41 to 68.
To 68, okay, so 40, I'm looking at the riding I currently represent, and I think that having, and I believe that's Drumheller-Stettler, is it? That's 41?
Probably, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and we lived in that riding for a while when I was a child. We lived in Ontario, a very small town not far from the Saskatchewan border, and it was a one-block square town, and even fewer people live there now than did then. And when you look at the trends of what's happening with population in ridings that are proposed to be significantly under the variance, it is unlikely that those ridings will increase, or at least that they will increase at the same rate that Edmonton, Calgary, and the other more urban centers are. So I think the best determinant of future is the recent past, and that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
bring to the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was probably a little bit of an unfair scenario to put to you.
I don't think it's unfair. Your job is to ask the
It
questions.
illustrates the paradox that we're faced with, and
Yeah, and I think my riding is growing much faster than the communities I grew up in rural Alberta, which are declining in enrollment. Yeah.
Mr. Evans, any
Yeah,
questions?
so what I'm hearing from you, Ms. Hoffman, is that, so previously, or I guess, your riding would be at 52,000, presumably, and it's proposed to be at 61. And you're saying that you're expecting significant growth, and we're going to overshoot our mark by quite a lot if we don't pare it down now.
I think the 61 is based on most recent data that we have, which is almost a year old at this point, is
Yeah.
it?
Right.
I think it's already more than 61 quite a bit, especially given some of the seniors apartments that have opened in the riding. I'm just showing you what's currently under construction in about the 4 neighborhoods I had a chance to drive through in those 90 minutes. So I think we're already significantly over 61 and will be far in excess of it by the provincial election and definitely by the following provincial election.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sampson?
I hear exactly what you're saying. I don't, and we heard it in the submissions. I don't know if you know, but we got 1,100 submissions from the interim report. And it was very hot, I call this a hot spot, that these two ridings joined together. So we will be looking at it. I can't promise anything, but we're going to look at it.
Thank you.
And this is really valuable stuff that you took the time to do.
Thank you.
And there are some ridings in Edmonton that are not close to yours. I mean, there's room for us to play without adding another electoral division. Dr. Martin?
I'm trying to absorb the maps that you provided, which I will, but I haven't done it yet. But I want to take you just to one, just so you can walk me through what it's actually telling me about proposed densities.
I'd love to.
And let's take this one since
Yeah.
I'm starting to scribble it up. So down the middle of this is an increased density plan for 124th Street. And then, of course, in classic form, for the most part, it goes to medium and low density as you move away from 124th Street on the other side. And then the Stony Plain intersection is going to be even more dense. Am I reading this correctly so far?
Yes, and already we're just east of Stony Plain Road on 124th Street, in that
Yeah.
sort of 105th Ave area. There's already been some low rises that have been demolished and some high rises built in that area in the last year, and it looks like there will be more to come.
Sure. That's just south of the Oliver.
West.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, and so along, now, what is the status of this plan? Presumably, it's a city plan, and it has been passed as an area redevelopment plan.
Yeah.
And so what is your sense of the current building activity in this particular zone?
Yeah, so I took a number of photos along 127th Street, so actually just west of it, where they look like it's not going to be dense for higher zoning. Yeah, thank you for that. So within there, that's where there are a number of the 8 and 16 plexes being built.
Yep.
But I actually didn't take a lot right along 124th Street, which is kind of funny because it's where the city's got a lot of focus. But there are, with what's happening right now, within the residential areas, there are a ton of 4, 6, and 8 plexes. There's even a 10-plex being built on one where it looks like 4 upper townhouses with 4 basement suites and then 2 garage suites being built as well over the 4 garages on one corner lot. So quite a bit of densification that way. And yeah, further up 124th Street as you reach 111th Avenue, which is near the top of this map, there are a number of brownfields, I think it is referred to, that I think people who've owned that land for 20 plus years have been prospecting for increased densification, and there aren't for sale signs on them right now. So it feels to those of us in the neighborhood that there's going to be more construction in that area imminently as well. And then along 111th Avenue, the city has been buying up a lot of the corner lots along that street. So it also is anticipated that there will be more purpose-built, probably nonprofit or city-partnered housing along that way. So while 124th Street is a north-south running corridor, there are branches coming off it to the east and west where there's densification happening right now as well. But yeah, the largest area of densification is that sort of red center around Stony Plain and 124th Street where they're putting in a major transit center. We've already got a few 8 and 16-story buildings, and it seems like there will be significantly more in the future if council's proposals continue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Wow. Yeah, so that's the great, thank you very much for this, because this is I think the reason we write an interim report and put out specific proposals so people who are actually in those neighborhoods can tell us specifically what's actually happening on the ground. Because as you may have heard previous, I think the last presenter, the data we have is lagging data, so in the past. So over the last 7 or 8 years, Glenora, Riverview have grown absolutely, but less relative to the rest of the province. Do you believe that the growth in the next 7 or 8 years is going to meet or exceed the average of the rest of the province?
I think Glenora grew at about the provincial average, but I'm not sure about Riverview. I think you highlighted that actually in our last presentation. I appreciated it. One of the reasons why I think Glenora Riverview will grow much faster than the rest of the province is because even in this last year, and that data isn't factored into the census data you have, their City of Edmonton open data shows that within the Henday, over 40% of the new units were added to the City of Edmonton. So there's still slightly more than the majority happening outside of the Henday, but there's a ton of new units being built within in terms of a net increase. And because the LRT is anticipated, is coming through my riding and is anticipated that Valley West line to have significant transit-oriented development, and already some towers have been built around where the proposed stations will be, I expect that it will be even faster. But the other piece that I did want to highlight is these, 16 plexes and 8 plexes that are coming in the middle of neighborhoods. Those aren't even in these transit-oriented routes, but they are within, 5 to 10 minute walk of where transit will be and where there are bike lanes and other opportunities. And I remember feeling some guilt when I moved into a duplex in my riding. So I was like, I don't know how people are going to feel about a duplex. And my neighbors were overwhelmingly positive. In that, it used to be a rundown house that had police and EMS at it on a regular basis. People were squatting in it, those types of things. And instead now, there are 2 homeowners who are active members of the community. And there is more of that happening throughout the area, as well as a number of seniors retiring and wanting to downsize. One of the buildings that opened on the Charles Campbell site, and that's sort of in the middle of this, is in the middle of this package.
While you look for that, if you don't mind, maybe I'll ask a follow-up
Sure.
question, if that's all right.
Yep.
In your presentation, you said you wouldn't suggest which parts may shift elsewhere, so I won't ask you that specific question, but are there neighboring parts of Edmonton
That your
that might or
neighbors
might
want.
not,
Your neighbors might want.
that might or might not border on your constituency?
Which one of your children is your favorite? Is that your question, Mr. Clark?
No, least favorite. That's what you-
Yeah.
I tell my 2 kids that they are within the top 5 kids I have.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Just need to guess.
Okay, so let me touch on,
That was Clark.
So, but in all sincerity, if there were somewhere, so we're looking at this, for example, and I see your
Yeah.
next door neighbor colleague is sitting in the audience behind you. If again, there's some cascading that needs to happen
Yeah.
as well. I guess I'm really just interested in, are there parts that are adjacent that would be slower growing that might make some sense if we were to try to balance out things here?
so one of the pieces that I brought last time that I would encourage you to consider again is around high school catchment area. And I think when you think about communities of like interest, kids who grow up together, who play sports together, who go to the same high school, I think as much as we can keep those families connected in the same representative area, I think that would be wise. That doesn't mean our boundaries need to match high school catchment areas, but I think that would be a good measure of influence for communities of like interest. The 2 most easterly neighborhoods that are proposed to come out of Edmonton Glenora and go into Edmonton Centre in the last redraw were added. So that was Prince Rupert and Blatchford. They have been the child that's been moved between families multiple times over the last probably 3 or 4 rewrites of the maps. They regularly move, and I imagine that one of your considerations is that Blatchford will have continued increased development over the next 8 years. Yeah, it is. I didn't even include it in this because it isn't proposed to be in Edmonton Riverview, but if downtown is having more densification and includes Blatchford, I think that's something that you'll want to consider moving forward. The furthest west parts of the riding were proposed to come out of Glenora as well. Honestly, it is such a pressure point. I don't want to pick a specific neighborhood, but I will say that the 2 furthest east that are already being proposed to come out were only added 8 years ago. I don't know how people will feel about that, but I think they're used to having some change. At one point they were Calder, at another point they were Centre, at one point they're Glenora. And there is a lot of change happening in those areas in terms of densification and completely new build-outs in Blatchford. So I understand why you maybe proposed moving those out. But yeah, if I were in your shoes for an hour, because I don't want to be in them for the duration of this, I would say maybe we need to add 1 more seat somewhere between the Yellowhead and the White Mud to do some reconfiguration of that part of the city, because I think your acknowledgement that we are continuing to grow outside of the Henday is wise, and we will continue to grow outside of the Henday, but we are also growing within. And to take 1 seat from within the Henday and put it outside of the Henday to account for that, I don't think is fair to all of the people who currently live in the core and are planning on moving there in the next year or beyond. So that's my general problem that I leave you to solve.
Okay.
We want to hear solutions.
All right.
Well, yeah,
Dr. Martin.
good luck.
Thank you.
Okay,
And that was
thank you. By the way, you've got
Madam Chair.
55 minutes left in your hour to be in our shoes. So.
I'll stay for at least 20.
Okay. Okay, one more presenter before break. Yeah, I've got David Egan.
2, Earl Grecian.
Oh, because I provided an update this morning.
Earl's not on mine. Okay. Okay, so I guess Earl's first. Earl. Okay, come forward. Sorry, I had an old one. Sorry.
It'll be Sylvan Lake in this way.
Okay, welcome. Introduce yourself and tell us what riding you're in and which ridings you want to comment on.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Earl Dreesen. I'm a former MP for Red Deer and Red Deer Mountain View. And I wish to speak to the proposed riding of now Sylvan Lake Innisfail. And so I wanted to kind of give a bit of an overview of my experience as far as being a political representative. My wife and I, we've been farming the Pine Lake area for over 50 years, continuing the tradition of forefathers that had come here prior to Alberta becoming a province. Really, I suppose, in one way, I'm one of those people that you can say went to a one-room schoolhouse and all of the stories associated with it. But I bring this up not just for nostalgic reasons, but when consolidation had taken place in 1961. There were 13 students in our school. We ended up being split into 4 different directions. So we ended up having students go to Delburn, to Elnora, to Huxley, and in our case, to Innisfail. So this is sort of some of the things that can happen when governments and go through the things that they must do in order to maintain what is required. But I also became a teacher, and I started teaching in Elnora, grades 1 through 9, and then for the next 34 years, I taught at the Innisfail High School as a senior high math and science specialist. I also served as a political liaison between the Alberta Teachers Association and the Government of Alberta. My political career started municipally when I was elected as a hospital board director for Elnora, and I served on this board for many years, eventually as the chairman, and I also chaired the Ultra Hills Advisory Committee, implementing innovative healthcare delivery systems in the communities of Elnora, Trochu, and Three Hills. And during that era, I had the good fortune to be able to work with many provincial cabinet ministers and other members of the Alberta legislature on an ongoing basis. And during the boundary review that was taking place at that time, we were able to stress the importance of rural representation, and I spoke of the necessity of representation by responsibility. Rural MLAs at that time dealt with multiple hospital boards, school boards, municipal councils, while their Edmonton and Calgary counterparts had but one municipal council to deal with, 2 health boards, 2 school boards, and significantly they shared that responsibility with many other urban MLA colleagues. Also, the extensive travel time in rural areas and extensive points of contact with constituents were considerations that were often overlooked. When the commissioners understood the reality of that rural representation, changes that reflected rural community needs were gratefully implemented. Now, after retiring from teaching, my life took an unexpected turn, and I was once again involved in politics. So I've served as a member of Parliament over 16 years. Initially, I represented the Red Deer federal riding, which encompassed both the city of Red Deer and the county of Red Deer and all of the towns and villages within the county, including the 2 largest of Innisfail and Sylvan Lake. So I quickly got firsthand experience in dealing with the responsibility of representing a diverse group of citizens. And my experience was much different than that of my urban MP colleagues who shared a far lesser variety of issues. In 2015, the Red Deer riding was split into 2 electoral districts. The northern part of Red Deer, Sylvan Lake, and the northern Red Deer County became part of the new Red Deer-Lacombe riding. Red Deer South, Innisfail, and southern part of Red Deer County joined Mountain View County in the new Red Deer Mountain View riding, which I had the honor of representing until my retirement in 2025. Rural provincial ridings in Alberta should not be decreased. Representation by responsibility is important today as it ever was. Rural MLAs have huge geographic areas to cover, many municipal councils to deal with, many varied issues to address, and are the main point of contact for government services for their constituents. I'd recommend that the growing town of Sylvan Lake, soon to be city, be added to the Lacombe provincial riding, mirroring the present federal central Alberta riding configuration. And I believe that Innisfail and the other towns, villages, and hamlets along the Highway 2 corridor, such as Bowden, Penhold, Springbrook, Gasoline Alley, and Black Falls, along with the towns, villages, and hamlets along the Highway 21 corridor of Joffre, Delburn, Luzana, Elnora, Huxley, and Trochu, should be included in a new riding. My recommendation is based on the unique aspects and ties of these vibrant rural communities. They represent strong north-south economic corridors with major railways and highways that support farms, ranches, grain company elevators, machinery dealerships, and other agriculture businesses, along with oil and gas industry and resource development in central Alberta. So I thank you for your consideration, and I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Grecian. Just give us a moment to, everybody has that map. And by the way, have you submitted a written
Yes.
presentation? So your proposed descriptions are in?
Yes, they are.
To us. Okay. Mr. Evans, any questions?
No, but thank you for your submissions.
Thank you.
Ms. Sampson?
Hi, long time no see.
Hi, Susan.
Welcome. It's good to see you. Sorry you're bringing me bad news.
I've already gone through that once when I had to say goodbye to Sylvan Lake when the change took place in 2015.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you know we have strong ties. And I want to get your opinion on, when I think about the history, and I'm speaking specifically of Sylvan Lake, when I think about the history of our ties into that riding since 1993 with no change, when I think about the county of Red Deer being in its entirety that level of government to help out those municipalities that are inside it and the convenience of that. And lastly, when I think about the strides we've made on partnerships with our area partners when it comes to healthcare and the urgent care, and forming a solid voice to advocate with the government. I find it interesting that you think the town of Sylvan Lake would be better elsewhere. Can you speak to that specifically?
Certainly. One of the portions of the proposal was, of course, to reduce rural representation in central Alberta. And it's from that position that I'm coming from. I believe that there was a basis for Sylvan Lake and at the federal level for Sylvan Lake and Lacombe County, or Lacombe, to be together, in that the lake is surrounded by the two counties. And so that was the trade-off that I felt. At least that's something that a positive that we can talk about when it was done federally. And I believe continuing with that, it also makes the fact that Sylvan Lake, even just in the name that we've given, Sylvan Lake and Innisfil, shows the prominence of that community. So I think that's part of what we're looking at there. Where a boundary might go between Sylvan Lake and Red Deer, I guess that is something that one can take a look at. But I really think that it's important that we look at the key component, which is ensuring that rural representation remains as it is at this particular point in view. So that's my reason for going that particular route. Sylvan Lake, and I know many people that are in the Sylvan Lake and Lacombe area and the things that are going on along Highway 20. All of those, there's great growth potential that is there, and we certainly see what is happening. My daughter had taught in Sylvan Lake, so I know all of those things that are taking place in there. So that's really where I'm at when I put that into the proposal. The key aspect of it as well, though, is the rest of the riding, where we're talking about a Highway 2 corridor. We have CN and we have CP, so the two rail lines that come down, they are part of an economic corridor that is really critical. And I think that's really important. We have massive terminals, grain terminals, that are on both of those lines. We have in Springbrook probably the largest flour mill in Canada that is being is being built, and this year probably is going to start in production. So we see that more on the agricultural side of things. So I think agriculture is the key component. We have equipment dealerships in Penhold and a couple in the county of Red Deer, and in Trochu, a couple in Trochu. I mean, these are the areas that are really key onto the agricultural form. And there's a lot. We live at Pine Lake. We're on a farm, but I mean, there's tens of thousands of people that show up there in the summertime. But we have a lot of people that are coming in to subdivision. There's new subdivisions that are showing up, but also with smaller areas as well. So these are what I'm looking at in the future. When I see, and really I did look at the healthcare side of it, because I was part of it when the healthcare boards were removed. I know that the complete story was, there must be something wrong that Alberta done. But of course, as a federal politician, I recognize the major cut there was from the federal government to the provinces, so that they had to do something in order to maintain balance. So I understand those types of things. I understand how politics sometimes works, and but also what it does to communities. And that's why my major focus is to make sure that we have that type of rural representation. And the other aspect of it is, love my colleagues, the ones that are in the cities and so on. But, if we have a Canada Day event, or if we have a Remembrance Day ceremony, there's 15 or 20 of them that can kind of decide where they want to go. With us, we have 7 or 8 places that we are supposed to go at one time, and it's very difficult to do. it's a labor of love, and that, you do it, but it's hard that way. The last, and I'm not sure how my time is, but the last thing I would like...
over it, but keep going.
Okay, but the last thing I would like to say is when the city of Red Deer was split in half for that time being, the one promise that I made is that I would never represent half of the city. And I believe that those MLAs that share the city and the rural area around it are richer for that experience. And I believe in the hub and spoke concept of it. I know that we are here in Edmonton, and the city center has to be associated with the pockets that are there and the ridings that are there. But when you get into the outer edges, there's an opportunity then to get a bit more of that rural flavor that makes the riding so important. So thank you very much.
Okay. Contribution. Dr. Martin?
Thank you very much, sir. I wanted to take you to the eastern part of the riding and to Highway 21.
Yes.
Which is, as you very well know, is adjacent to the railway. And I want to ask you about Trochu.
Certainly.
Currently isn't in this map, but we've heard
Nope.
a very great deal about this as a grain corridor. And I wanted to press you on the economic logic, if you will, of including Trochu in this riding.
Trochu has some unique aspects to it. It has two equipment dealerships that are there. It also is in the center of three different high-capacity grain terminals. So there's one closer to Three Hills, there's one right by Trochu, and there's one in Huxley, which is a few miles away. So these are 100-car, 120-car spots that they have, or two of them are. And the traffic that goes along there, we were hauling grain last week, and it would take you 2 or 3 minutes to get onto the highway from 590 where we're at because of the traffic that is there. There's a massive amount of activity that takes place, and Trochu is certainly one of the key components of that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Clark?
Yeah, thank you. It's tough when you have to go last, because Julian often takes my questions. So. Lots of discussion last week about Trochu. So I guess one of the mandates of the Boundaries Commissions, I'm sure you know, is clear and understandable boundaries. And in the case of the current Innisfail Sylvan, we haven't done a whole lot to the constituency, right? So as it stands now, it's not massively different. I think we bumped it out a little bit west. And I guess that's part of what I wanted to ask you about is it currently functioning okay? I know you may have some insight into the current MLA, but notwithstanding that, I guess I'm just curious, do you feel like it's working okay as it is now, or I know you've made a case here that we need to shuffle things up a little bit?
Well, I think that where I look at it from is when the proposal was that there would be less representation in central Alberta. So then you take that as your first premise and then say, okay, now that means we need to do this and then we need to do that. I'm suggesting that that is not the right way to go, and that we should be looking at maintaining the same number of regions in central Alberta. So when you look at potentially 3 ridings in one in central Alberta, one in southern Alberta, one in northern Alberta being pulled out from the rural. We do have the extra 2 that are coming into the cities. But then to change that, that's where I believe that we need to really reconsider just where we're at there. And so that's why when you start to say, okay, well, how then would you make that work? That I'm simply saying that this would be a way to do that, is to pull in this again. You know what? I still spent a lot of time in Sylvan, even though it wasn't part of my riding. But nevertheless, sometimes you simply have to look at it and say, okay, well, this is a chance, and it's also a chance for hopefully the new city of Sylvan to have its own future and design, you know, as we move forward. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grecian.
Chair. Thank you very much.
And I'll excuse you from the table, but please remain. By the way, this has got to be the best day of people staying after they presented. I always gently encourage people, and most people just leave. But it's helpful for everybody to hear the other person's presentations, especially if it's somewhat contrasting. So thank you very much. Mr. Egan, please come forward. I was all set to make some smart comment when I was going to call you up earlier, saying we were on time, and just before the break, but no, we're not on time. But as you can see, time limits are not strictly enforced in these proceedings, so please proceed and tell us what we need to know.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate being in front of you here again. And just by way of opening remarks, I, of course, am the MLA for Edmonton Northwest, and so that's what I am advocating for here today, as well as the City of Edmonton. And I must say, before I begin, that I'm very impressed with this interim reports, and I can see a lot of thoughtful collaboration that took place. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that you all voted for this interim report as well, and I'm sure you know that is not often the case. And so I think that demonstrates a lot of work in the background that produced something that was both thoughtful and collaborative.
Did you read Appendix D?
I probably did.
Which is the history of Alberta's EC.
Oh, yes. I was using my own anecdotal history, you know, since I started doing this, and, you know, it was fractious at best. So congratulations for breaking that mold. So I was struck by a number of the other presentations that I heard earlier, and it's something similar that we can see in Edmonton Northwest as well. And this is the phenomenon of density and of building growth through infills. And we see a lot of this here in Edmonton Northwest as well. And I find it interesting when I look at your interim report that the proposed 4 most populated constituencies are all north in Edmonton, north of the river, and Edmonton Northwest is 4th in that regard. And so, you know, we can see some density, we can see some congestion there as well. And as described by my colleague from Edmonton Glenora, they're literally building these places in Edmonton Northwest right now. You know, as we speak, they're going up, these 2, 3, or even 400-person apartments, 8 or 10 stories high, in places like Griesbach and in Albany. And the density is quite breathtaking, really. It's growing in I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why we see this growth, but people are building on spec around new LRT and transit lines, and they're building for affordability, right? Quite frankly, young families will move into a place where they can get a single detached home or a townhome or a duplex where they can afford the mortgage. And that's what's happening in the north part of Edmonton Northwest. As I said when I previously presented, I have neighborhoods in my constituency that are more than 100 years old, and I have neighborhoods that are a few weeks old, probably at best. So it's a dynamic place. I love representing Edmonton Northwest, and I just want to advocate for a sense of purpose. And you did listen to the people that did present before, myself included, saying that we would like to keep the configuration of Edmonton Northwest as much as possible. And you did achieve that in this interim report. But you did add one neighborhood that I did represent before, but another 5,000 people or so. And, you know, together, I know, as Dr. Martin said, that you're not here necessarily to project the future, but, you know, we have to use an informed analysis of the immediate past to see what direction we're going to. And so for Edmonton Northwest to be at 61,000 and change with this proposal. I think it's a pretty conservative projection to see that it will exceed 70,000 in the next 5 or 6 years. And so we need to think about that as well. I think that I'm here representing people that have a very strong connection to community, and we have some of the best community leagues, I think, in Edmonton. Edmonton has very good community leagues in Canada, in fact, and they divide themselves up into areas. And so a lot of the neighborhoods that I represent belong to the Area 1 community leagues. And so keeping those together, I really appreciated that, and they appreciate that too. I'm literally going to a dinner in a couple of weeks where they meet every 6 months or so, and those are all of those neighborhoods in Edmonton Northwest. And, you know, that sort of informal sort of governance and community building is, it's not always so tangible, but it's indispensable for people looking after each other and so forth. So I appreciate that somehow you did manage to keep those things together. So, again, I can see that Edmonton is growing very quickly. I appreciate that your proposal does add a seat to the city of Edmonton, but considering, as I said, with Northwest, Glenora, West Henday, and McClung being the top 4 sized constituencies in your proposal, that it's an indicator, it doesn't necessarily have to be in this immediate geographic area, that Edmonton needs another seat. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. You caught me
Well, you know, it's, I guess,
Under the
30 seconds short, so there you go. Yeah.
just having heard the last 2 presenters.
Yes.
We have one lawyer on the panel here, and maybe there's more lawyers in the crowd. But in law school, you have to moot cases, and sometimes you have to switch sides.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking, you know, what would be a really good idea is to make the rural MLAs advocate for the city's expansion, and the city MLAs advocate for the rural.
Yeah, I mean, certainly my proposal around.
Mr. Egan come up here.
Well, no, I don't want to.
We're going to give us some submissions.
Someday I may be on the Electoral Commission, but not today. I mean, my advocacy for a seat in Edmonton, another seat in Edmonton, I'm not doing it at the expense of the rural areas. I think it's very important for us to. I recognize the differential between, you know, you can't have a 62,000 person rural riding, of course, right? But, you know, at the same time, we can see the trends, and people do pay attention to the value of a vote. And so if someone is coming from an area, like the proposed Mackenzie area, for example, it was 30-some thousand, I think, yeah. And then, of course, that would be half as much as the one in Edmonton Northwest. So, you know, God bless the proposed Mackenzie. I think that's a fantastic idea. I really do. I'm just here to advocate for Edmonton Northwest.
And, you know, I don't recall any Edmonton MLA complaining at all about their high numbers the first time around. I mean, in fact, they were fighting not to lose areas because everybody loves their area.
Right. Yeah.
But I get the pressure points, you know, from Ms. Hoffman and your presentation, and
Yes.
The uniqueness of those 4 ridings are probably the most, not only the highest, but they're going to be the most pressure laden. So,
Yes.
Okay, questions, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I guess that's, forecasting, again, if you've heard some of my questions, they'll be similar, but I guess I'm interested in the Edmonton Northwest context.
Yes.
How foreseeable is some of that development that you suggest is likely coming? And as you can tell, part of the challenge we're dealing with here is always a bit of a cascading, effect, and in trying to keep community leagues together, that's part of the reason we put all of Calder into Northwest.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a 6 of one, half dozen of the other kind of thing. But I guess are there, like MLA Hoffman, very specific targeted developments that are planned for Northwest, and if so, what?
Oh, for sure. And, we have the good fortune of having many of the developers who are developing in Edmonton Northwest also live there. And so I know, I meet with them on a regular basis, and I'm friends with some of them, that, they're building significant units and development in Griesbach in anticipation of the transit that will be there on the corner of 113A and 137th Ave, right? And then, again, they're literally building the multi-unit apartments and townhomes in Albany, and as we speak. And then even on the other side of the Henday, jumping across immediately west of the Remand Center, there's a significant development that's being sited and graded right now.
Thank you. Dr. Martin?
I can't remember the name of it now, because there's no one there right now, but it's just on the other side of the Henday, with the 127th Street overpass, and then west. Oh, yeah, okay, thanks.
Originally, you were talking about over here, right? When you were talking about
Yeah, so,
Like Forest Lawn?
so 127th Street, when it hits the Henday, and then it's just immediately west of there. That's a projected, higher, yeah, you can't reach that.
I think that's Forest Lawn, I think is where it is.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that's another one. So, but the real density is Griesbach and Albany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Sampson, any questions?
No, I'm just looking at the map in front of me, and I can see where the 4 ridings are actually, the 3 ridings are holding that, 4 ridings are holding that heavy density.
Yeah.
And we certainly will have a look at it. I don't know where the extra electoral district, there are no extras, so what I
Yeah.
see happening is we're gonna start pushing things around.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I'm not here to, ask for this neighborhood and put this neighborhood over
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I
I'm
agree.
looking at the city globally, and just, these 4 constituencies are a case in point for significant growth and density, and they happen to be the top 4 in the province.
Yeah.
And that's, it's a good problem to have in a way. I mean, we see the vibrancy, we see, I see shops and so forth that I would never dream of being in Edmonton Northwest 10 years ago. So it's definitely, it's growing, and it's, the economy is growing too, which is, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Did I get you?
You
Nope.
didn't, but I'm just kind of dumbfounded, so I don't
Dr.
really have
Martin.
a question. Livingston McLeod has over 60,000 people in our
Okay.
configuration, so.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
These Edmonton ridings plus the farthest away riding in the south.
Yeah.
I don't know how we make you smaller, actually, Mr. Ringman.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm arguing this based on the premise that there's growth in Edmonton, and I'm not, I'm trying to look at it on a more global sort of basis. So, I mean, Edmonton Northwest is a case in point. That's what that's the approach I'm taking.
Yeah, and just to conclude, again, enrolling you in our dilemma.
Yeah.
Past performance is no indicator of future events. And this is something that we're always told about the markets and investing.
Yeah.
But it is also true about area restructure plans. So we have to be very, very careful. MLA Hoffman provided actual pictures of stuff that has Tyvek on it, which
Yep.
I'd love to see, because that seems much more real
Yeah.
than developer's brochure or city planning department's expectation. Because for us, we need to feel confident that we're actually seeing, as it were, real growth,
Yeah.
rather than potential, because everybody has potential.
For sure. Yeah. No, I restricted my comments to the Griesbach area, where these buildings are. They're there, right? I mean, people are moving into them, and they're not reflected in the population census that this interim report was based on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Egan, for presenting. I'm going to excuse you from the table. Now is our schedule, we're about 10 minutes past our scheduled break time. I'm going to use the chairman's prerogative, and we're not going to have a break. If any of the panel members have to take a break, then go do it now. We will go to our next presenter, David Shepherd. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Do we want to wait for Mr. Clark to return, or you'll...
You talk really slow.
Okay, sure. And I'm sorry, what is the time that I have again? 6 minutes. Thank you. I will just set a timer to make sure
No
that
one's met
keep
that
track of it.
deadline.
Okay.
Except for Mr.
I try to be thorough. It's, practice in the legislature and all. But good afternoon, thank you. It's wonderful to see you all again, and I appreciate the opportunity to present again. David Shepherd. Last 10 years, I've had the honor of serving as the MLA here in Edmonton City Centre. Been a resident of the constituency since about 2008. So appreciate the chance to share a few thoughts on the draft constituency map that you put forward for the commission. First, I want to say thank you for all the work you have put in creating this map. I know it's not an easy job. It's a pretty challenging task, in fact, weighing a lot of different intersecting considerations, competing interests. I love puzzles. I love word games, jigsaw puzzles, logic puzzles, working on a 2,000-piece one I started just over the Christmas holidays. But I think the work that you've had, that's a bigger puzzle than I've ever attempted. I'm not sure I'd want to. But I really appreciate your efforts. Clearly, there's a lot of thought and consideration that went into creating these new proposed boundaries. And in particular, I want to say thank you for recognizing the rapid growth of our population in Edmonton by granting us an additional seat. I think as you're aware, 22 to 24, where our city saw its highest two-year rate of growth since 2003. So it's about 100,000 new residents. That's a 10% increase. And the chief economist does forecast that growth is going to continue, hitting about 1.25 million by 2027, and that's about 5 years earlier than had been projected in the city plan that was put forward in 2019. So the additional seat, I think, is well essential and important. And indeed, as my colleagues have noted, there could even be room for consideration, I think, of an additional seat. I note in the report you did talk about the 6 electoral divisions in the urban center of Edmonton being consolidated into 5, and that is in fact what you chose to do, to reflect that the rate of population growth in these areas has been below that of the city. I think my colleague, Sarah, in Edmonton Glenora spoke well to the growth in that she's seeing in her community. I'll speak a bit to what I'm seeing in Edmonton City Centre. Now, I don't have specific photos of projects, but what I can tell you is as I'm out door knocking in the communities around Edmonton City Centre, whether that be Spruce Avenue, Queen Mary Park, some of these neighborhoods, Westwood, you cannot go down a block without seeing infill. It is consistent, it is rapid, and it is continuing. And with the election of, Edmontonians chose to re-elect a mayor and council who are dedicated to incentivizing that work. So we are certainly seeing that growth here. We have new condo towers that are being built across the downtown of Wiquentu, and I would note the parks just over here by O'Damon Park. So as we see that development investment from the city, we are seeing new condo towers, so in the downtown and in Wiquentuin. And we are also seeing current apartment buildings, so some of these 3-story walk-ups that are being redeveloped. So torn down, redeveloped, adding additional units. So we are seeing some significant growth here. I would note also then that the province stepping forward with their investment for the ICE district alongside the city of Edmonton includes plans for 4,500 new homes in the Village at ICE district. So I think ultimately, as Sarah noted, taking a seat from between the Yellowhead and the White Mud could be a decision for now, but it could be a decision that could rapidly have to be reversed as we continue to see this growth and development within the inner core. Just to reiterate, I think what I said previously when I presented here, I think the most effective and fair electoral map is one that groups communities of like interest and needs together. And I think I would say in terms of Edmonton City Centre, the adjustments you're proposing do meet with that. But I would continue to iterate, I think that it's worth considering as we are looking at some of the communities around the fringes of our city as well. Let's take a look here. What else do I want to make sure I get in? Yeah, in general, I'd say, the communities in my constituency have common interest needs, and then those outside our core, those in the suburbs, those communities in turn have their own more common interests and needs than those outside of our city boundaries. Lastly, I would just say, I guess, hearing some of the comments, like looking at rural versus urban, and I appreciate, I think it was my colleague David Egan that kind of noted, we do need to consider, local representation, yes, in terms of the ability of MLAs to appear at community events, be able to get out to local councils and those sorts of things, but we also do really have to weigh the democratic representation in terms of keeping those numbers similar so that we don't have too much discrepancy between the population sizes in some of the rural seats versus the urban seats, to have that equity of representation in the legislature where these considerable and major decisions are made. So ultimately what I'll say is, this is a process about creating electoral boundaries that provide Albertans across the province with fair representation. And that is absolutely core to our democratic process. And I think at a time when we only need to look south of the border and see the significant degradation of democratic norms, including an increasingly a liberal president openly calling for partisan interference in electoral boundaries, it's a reminder of how important a fair and balanced process driven by data truly is. So I truly appreciate the work that you're doing, the questions that I hear you asking, and the opportunities we each have to present to ensure that we get the best outcome we can for folks here.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Evans, questions?
No, I don't have any questions for you, but thank you for presenting.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming. Would it be safe to say that you like Edmonton Centre in the interim report?
Yeah, the boundaries have remained more or less similar. You have chosen to make the adjustment of removing Westwood and adding in Prince Rupert and Blatchford. In terms of numbers, relatively equal. In terms of communities of interest, I think still very well connected.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Martin?
That was basically my question.
Oh.
And I take it, Mr. Shepherd, that you have been here to hear your colleagues speak to Edmonton issues as well. So I won't press you on the same points. That would be tiresome. But
Right.
really the points that we have heard through much of this afternoon about Edmonton, I think would apply to the Edmonton Center situation as well.
Yes.
And so, yes, you probably need another seat. Do we have one? Probably no.
Fair.
I was going to tell Mr. Egan that if he was a betting man, I wouldn't bet on
Okay, yeah.
And then maybe the same.
You don't have a spare in the back pocket at the moment.
Alas.
No, but strangely, it's, well, no, I won't. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Apologies for stepping out there for a second.
No problem.
If I missed this already, I apologize. But the Spruce Avenue neighborhood, there was a suggestion earlier today that perhaps that would fit a little better in Highlands Norwood. But from one of the first presenters of the day. How do you feel about that suggestion?
I will echo my colleague from Glenora, and not wanting to have to pick amongst my children, but I would say I was at the Spruce Avenue Junior High today and had a great conversation with the kids there. I really appreciate that community. They are active, and while they are, not quite the same as some of the more urban, they are very closely connected with areas like Queen Mary Park, right? Certainly Prince Rupert, others. So I think they have quite a bit in common with the communities that I have here. Yeah.
And then do you feel you have the similar growth pressures as your colleague to the west in Glenora?
Oh, absolutely. As I was saying, I can't walk through Spruce Avenue or, Queen Mary Park without coming across infill. And so certainly that's very actively growing there. I mentioned new condominium buildings, apartment buildings that are going, redevelopment of previous apartment buildings. There was some slowing through COVID-19, but we're seeing that rapidly start to restart now. So certainly I anticipate quite a bit of growth.
And just one last quick question. Is there also a fair bit of kind of mid-rise density in those areas that you've talked about as compared to a little bit to the west?
Certainly, I believe Wequentuin is the densest community in Edmonton, so certainly you have quite a bit of those three, 4-story walk-ups, and like I said, a number of those being redeveloped into larger properties. So yeah, there's a fair amount of that there. Westwood, which you are proposing to remove, also has a number of those sort of mid-sized apartment buildings, as does Central McDougall.
Perfect. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Shepherd, maybe I could use this as an opportunity to just, how far, this isn't meant to be a cheeky question, but how far does it take you to get to your legislative office?
To my legislative office, yeah, it's about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the weather and the traffic. But yes, it's a short drive.
just to illustrate the stresses that we are under, last week someone from Northern Alberta presented and said, look, you know, and I didn't, this morning I had a presentation on effective representation, which is ultimately the goal of this commission. It's not numbers, it's not one person, one vote, it's not rep by pop like the Americans. So we have a different approach, effective representation. And one of the Northern presenters said, there's a paradox in that. Because when you work to make a northern riding closer to the average, you increase its size. And that makes it less effective representation. So I hope you appreciate, and I know you do, because you have colleagues that drive in 5 hours to the ledge every weekend, or after every weekend. So, and you didn't advocate numbers that much, but that's the problem for us, why it'll be very difficult to give an extra riding now to Edmonton.
I certainly recognize the challenges that are involved in that. And when
part
we're
of
looking
the
at
problem-
geography and population distribution, the challenges that creates, I have colleagues like Sarah Elmaligi in Banff Kananaskis, and talking with her about, you know, this, and I mean, and that's not as large as some of the northern,
Right.
but certainly hearing the kilometers she puts in her due diligence to visit all the communities she represents. So certainly it's a piece to balance.
Yeah, and part of the weaknesses or the limitations we have is we only have 2 more ridings to deal with. You know, 87 to 89. Probably could have used 6 or 7 more. But anyways, thank you so much, Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
If we had 6 or 7 more, we'd be done.
At least one round. Okay, now we've got, I believe it is a group of presenters, is it?
Just a me,
Okay,
I think. Leduc
Michelle?
County?
Yeah.
yeah. Are you Michelle
I
Scheidel?
am not Michelle. I'm Tanny DeBlanco, I'm the mayor of Leduc County.
Oh,
Michael probably organized all that, so that's probably why his name's there.
so, sorry, can you give us your name again?
Absolutely. First name's Tanny, T-A-N-N-I. Last name DeBlanco, D-O-B-L-A-N-K-O. And I am the mayor in Leduc County.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. And we're not here from Leduc County asking to add. We're asking for some tweaks
Okay.
on the boundaries. And
We're good at tweaks.
I know, and in fact, we've made the right work easy by giving you some options to look at, because that's just how we think. So really, it's about, we currently have 5 ridings that touch or affect us in Leduc County, and we're just talking about how we can make some of those more effective for our residents. And I really appreciate listening to some of the other presenters talk about community. So our changes aren't based on population, they're based on either social or economic community, as we call it. So with that, I'll get taking a look at. So the first change that we're going to look at is the one that's from the Strathcona Sherwood Park riding. And if you take a look in the bottom corner, you can see that this first off, this riding is very large, very rural, and it is looking to take a little piece, half of Beaumont, and a very small piece of Leduc County. That part of Leduc County actually is very densely populated, which is probably why it's been included for numbers, but it actually breaks up a significant social and economic sort of area for us, which is our country residential area in the east end of our county. The farmland isn't quite as good there, so we've actually allowed that to be where a lot of our country residential growth happens. So we think that that isn't going to work well for the residents in that area when you look at an MLA being spread out as far as he would be or she would be in that area. The second one is then a change to the Camrose riding, which is the next page in your handout. And this riding actually sits, if you can look really carefully
Sorry,
at the...
did you say handout?
Oh, I'm sorry, did you not get our handout?
Okay, as soon as Aaron comes in, he'll get it up to us, sorry.
Aaron,
Yeah,
on a break.
yeah.
No worries. If you can look really, really hard up at if you look at above the red line where it says Leduc County,
Yeah.
right above that is that little piece that was going to go to Strathcona riding. Now this bigger piece is going to be attached to the Camrose riding. And again, we're looking at a very large, mainly rural agricultural riding, which will include New Sarepta, which is a growth hamlet for us. We are looking at that as sort of our small growth hamlet. But also, again, it is a community of country residential areas out there that really stay together. Most of the people there work, for the most part, Leduc, Nisku, Leduc Business Park, or the airport. So the transportation corridors, all of those sorts of things are fitting into that smaller Leduc sub-region, and this really breaks up that social community. I heard one of the earlier presenters talk about things like community halls, and I think you all know how important a community hall or a community is. This is dividing it up by lines, and I think it would be less advantageous unless we looked at a couple of other options, which we actually have for you. So, moving on, what we would propose, and again, we like to make the right work easy, so we've given you some options here. We'd like to see that we keep the Leduc-Beaumont riding the same. And we believe that that has been one of the most successful ridings and work with the MLA there. We are looking at both the airport, Nisku Business Park, and all of those sorts of things which are industrial, really an industrial driver for the province. And having that economic generator with one MLA is absolutely, we believe, critical to the continued growth. We are looking currently, Leduc County is looking for some additional industrial growth on the west side of the airport that will tie in well with this sort of development that we're looking at. So that's one of the options that we have for you, and thank you, Aaron, for handing those out. The second one, oops, have I the Camrose, oh, I've gone backwards, sorry. So this next one involves actually two ridings, Wetaskiwin and Maskwacis, Ponoka, and Stony Plain, Drayton Valley, and Devon. I currently live in the Drayton Valley, Devon riding, farming out there with my husband until we run out of money like every other farmer does, but happily doing it. And we think it's a couple of changes on here, and this one actually extends the Stony Plain riding a bit, but we also think it makes more sense. It keeps the types of activities, the types of economic development the same, and it keeps that rural focus. Adding in Stony Plain would help with the population as well. So that's that option. And yep.
Can you just explain
Clark?
So
different colors?
our option,
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to.
so our option on the handout, and it's kind of hard to read, expands the Stony Plain riding all the way out to Highway 814.
Right.
So it's coming, and again, that provides a little bit more population while maintaining that notion of like-minded community, like-minded people, like-minded activities. It also kind of reflects how people move in that area and how they interact with each other. Again,
Is that-
our best idea. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but you're speaking north of the big river, and that will be the Genesee Bridge?
Right now, I'm
It's Dr.
speaking
Martin.
814, which goes east. By Michael, correct? Correct, right? It already goes across the river into Parkland County. That's not an issue. That's been there for a while. I think it mimics the federal one, which goes across the river as well. This is about expanding it a little bit farther east than what it was. Or, you know, you could shift a little bit around Kalmar. Again, that's in one of our pictures. The final piece is around the Wetaskiwin, Maskwacis, Ponoka. I've said those in the wrong order. And it deals with Pigeon Lake. Pigeon Lake is a, nice smile. Pigeon Lake is a very, very unique community, and we believe would be better served with one MLA. The number of summer villages, the number of property owners that are both in Wetaskiwin County and Leduc County. I think there's a likeness there that's better captured with one MLA as opposed to the proposal, which was to divide the lake up a bit.
Yeah.
So that was really 4.5 minutes, because I'm trying to keep under 6. But again, we realized that the commission was going to want to know, what do we want to do about it, right? Here's some issues, and so these are some options we have for you. But it really, first and foremost, keeping our Leduc-Beaumont riding the same is critical, absolutely critical. And not dividing up the area around Beaumont. Again, I understand the need for population, but I heard you say so eloquently before, it's not just about population. Beaumont's not a big enough city to be divided up with 2 MLAs. It's a small growing city, but it's more like Leduc and that area than it is about that larger Strathcona or Camrose area.
Okay,
So with
thank you.
that, I'm all out of, I should have taken a water during the non-break, but I'm done.
Okay, now you're going to get grilled.
I will just defer to Michael.
Mr. Evans, questions?
Well, that's, I really appreciate the options. That's very helpful. Getting all of this sort of.
Apologize, yeah.
Well, that's just testing my, how astute I am. But I can't find Pigeon Lake.
Oh, Pigeon Lake
I've
is,
driven through it, but,
No, you haven't.
well,
It's-
not the lake,
yeah,
but.
it's right at the bottom. If you look, I'm not even sure what map
Is
you're
it-
looking at.
It's the one that's Sundance Beach?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
Pigeon Lake.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just half of it, that's why it looks.
Yeah, we only
weird.
get half of the lake.
the good.
Well, about, yeah.
Okay. And again, the options just provide some food for thought for the commission. I know it's hard to think about how to redraw a line if you don't live it.
For not being in a large metropolitan area, you have a busy area.
We are extremely busy in
Yeah.
Leduc County, and that doesn't, take in Genesee and all of those sorts of areas and things that are happening out there.
Yeah.
We are proud of what we do.
Okay. Susan, any questions?
And just to be clear, because the maps are numerous, the priority is that the city of Leduc and the city of Beaumont reside together.
In the
It's
Leduc.
entirely inside your county.
Inside the current Leduc Beaumont riding, there's currently the riding, and we believe that will not only allow us to grow commercially and industrially, but it really holds the social fabric together for that sub-region.
Good, and then, the other tweaks, I will tell you that we will look at them in detail
Yes.
and do what's
Yes.
appropriate, but that Beaumont thing was, we
Yeah.
got a lot of pushback. It's a
Well,
hot spot.
yeah, and again, sometimes we're using a solution for one problem instead of
Right.
looking at the whole problem.
Yeah.
So hopefully, that gives you some food for thought.
Yeah.
We did run the numbers from the last statistics, and they seem to be plus or minus 25.
Yeah.
We've done that work too, so.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
see, I
appreciate
didn't do
it.
that work.
Take the credit.
Okay. Julian?
Thank you. I want to
Dr. Martin.
tell you that our numbers modeling suggests that if we bring the entirety of Beaumont back into the fold,
Right,
plus give you back Rowley View
Yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
Luma piece, you're at 75,000.
huh.
Yeah, so there's our problem.
Are you okay at 68
Well,
or 65?
which people are we throwing out?
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Welcome to
yeah,
our world.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
so thank you for that. I wasn't aware of that, and that's very interesting, because that area is the absolute, I hear growth pressures from urban. Those, both Leduc and Beaumont are facing, 30, 20%, whatever they're facing for growth is ridiculous. Plus Leduc County itself has a small urban growth area that is exploding as well. So thank you for that, Dr. Martin, because I guess that's the good and the bad of growth.
Where's the exploding growth portion of Leduc County?
Okay, so you know where the Nisku Business Park is? Okay, so if you take a look at Beaumont on one of the maps,
Yeah.
and you come a little bit west, there's a small area between Beaumont and Nisku Business Park that is being developed at an urban standard by Leduc County.
Yeah.
It's called the Vistas. We're going to call it, I don't know what we're going to call it when it actually finishes, but yes. So we do have an urban growth node there, and it is growing very rapidly.
I happen to have been there 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
so
really?
I was lost. That's where I turned into and said, wow, look at the houses.
Yeah.
So I can attest to this. But again, you compound the dilemma, don't you?
Well, they're compound, it's about growth, right?
Yeah.
Growth is good and bad. I think that we all agree with that. But knowing those numbers is a little bit more sobering for me. And let me, echo what I heard some of the other speakers saying. I'm glad I'm not on that side of the bench.
You know why we carved Beaumont out,
Yeah, it
So
makes
was
sense
it
now.
50th, was it 50th?
Yeah, 50th Street goes right down the middle. But again, Beaumont's such a small city to divide up, but
Yeah. Okay. Anything, Mr. Clark?
Well, and that's actually really what I wanted to dive into, because your current boundaries do not include the areas immediately east of Beaumont, Roleyview, et cetera. So,
those are in Masquachese.
yeah, exactly, right? So if you're saying, really, what we'd really like is just to keep it the way it is now, which is Leduc and Beaumont together.
Yep. And
And now that still leaves us other problems
Yes.
that we can sort of have to sort out. But I guess, so right now, according to our Office of Statistics and Information, Leduc Beaumont is about 65,460 on the average of 54,929, which puts you about 19% over. But it's still within the range. So
That's with all of Beaumont.
but it's with all of
All of
that's
Beaumont.
today's
Right,
2017
right.
boundaries, which is all of Beaumont and Leduc together. Essentially, it's just the two urban areas of Leduc and Beaumont
Correct.
and not much else.
Yeah, right.
And everything in between. but
Yes,
that's
which is pretty small.
so I guess that really the question, what you're saying, because often folks are coming to us saying, please, 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 we have too many people in this
Yeah,
constituency. You need to make it smaller. But what you're saying is, actually, we're willing to take that in exchange for having Leduc and Beaumont together.
Right.
And then some of the others, okay.
Right.
That's-
And
yeah.
again, well said. We can certainly, right now, those areas, those country residential areas, the new Sareptas, those are currently in with a Misquachie. Masquachese. And that works really well. Minister Wilson understands that area, works really well out there. And it's, again, it keeps a community that's alike together. That country residential has very, very distinct needs from the rest of our county. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. And then the other portion that you'd mentioned, south, to move Pigeon Lake into Masquachese.
Yep.
You've got a line here that runs east-west on your map. I guess what I wonder is, is that a sort of south of Kavanaugh, south of Thorsby, which would take it out of Stony Plain, Drayton Valley, Devon, and put it into Masquachese, Wetaskiwin. Is that sort of what line have you chosen?
Well, I think a couple of things. So when you look at that area, Kavanaugh down to like the Leduc border, that's generally farmland, very sparsely populated. So I guess my comment is whether it goes with Drayton Valley, Devon, Stony Plain, or it goes with Wetaskiwin, Masquachese, doesn't really matter because those are very alike. Right, and because the small population in there isn't going to make a difference for population, but it might help you guys with your how you draw your lines.
Can I ask, would it be possible, this is a fabulous map, it would be really great if we could have maps just your suggestion, not without the other, is that possible?
My guy says yes.
That would be really, I think that would be really helpful. And that's probably just my shortcoming and
Yeah,
having a
no,
difficult time
it is, they are
visualizing
hard
what's
to
what.
read, I agree.
No, but
I agree, yeah.
the work you put into this, and lots of folks come to us with problems and not many solutions. So we really appreciate proposed solutions, especially from folks who are representing as elected representatives their communities. It helps a lot, so thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have a Case IH tractor instead on the front?
This is true.
There's been no, we would have been, I would have been fired if it hadn't been a John Deere.
Oh,
Not
okay.
that I'm a John Deere girl, but it is the tractor of Leduc County.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next presenter, Jason, Jason Deal. Jason Deal. Oh, yeah, Jason, okay. Okay, introduce yourself, please, and tell us what riding you live in and what electoral district you want to talk about.
Sure. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Jason Diol. I've been a lifelong resident of the Millwoods area, but specifically I want to talk a little bit today about the south of Edmonton and a little bit about Edmonton in general. Thanks to the Commission, for all the work that's already gone into this, into the report, all these public hearings. I'm sure there's a lot of different type of opinions and all challenges, balancing all of that. But I just wanted to speak to, I guess, some of the kind of concerns, specifically in my community. So I live in Crawford Plains, so it will now be under the proposed boundaries in the new Edmonton Southeast riding.
Sorry, can you describe your district again?
Yeah, so I live specifically in the Crawford Plains community.
Crawford Plains, okay.
Yeah, and so just north of Anthony Henday and east of 50th Street.
Okay.
So just that kind of northern little cutout in the new Edmonton Southeast. And under the current boundaries, I live in the Edmonton Ellerslie riding. So when I'm kind of thinking, I guess, of effective representation and about kind of community, I don't actually feel like either of these boundaries were effective representation or represented where I live in my communities. And I was happy to see a new riding get added in the South. I think that was absolutely necessary, like with the population, the continued development moving south, it was absolutely necessary. But my own community, and specifically the communities north of Anthony Henday, between 50th Street and 34th Street, so Crawford Plains, Pollard Meadows, Daly Grove, these are much more mature and older neighborhoods that really feel like a part of Millwoods as compared to everything that is south of Anthony Henday. So even within the current boundaries being in Edmonton Ellerslie, I think it feels like quite a disconnect from all of the communities kind of north of that. So if you asked anybody in around that area where they live, like nobody would identify with Ellerslie. I think in terms of the naming identity, and then even in terms of, how you commute, where you work, where you shop, and more specifically, maybe where you're going to school or where your kids go to school. So I think there's a bit of a divide between maybe some of the concerns and challenges that people will care about in these communities, and specifically just when it comes to kind of the identity, right? Like everything north is, built in the 70s. It's kind of part of that old Millwoods, versus everything south of that is where we're seeing most of the development. And I know there's a lot of challenges, especially when it comes to population in terms of how you kind of make that work. But under both of these boundaries, it feels like my community's just been a little kind of add-on to balance out the population. Like as I mentioned, in the current boundaries when it comes to Edmonton Ellerslie, it just does not feel like it actually represents those areas of Crawford, Daly Grove, and Pollard Meadows. When it comes to challenges that people are facing in these newer areas, like something we typically see is infrastructure like access to schools. That's always been a concern for people when we're seeing newer areas get developed. It feels like a lot of that infrastructure is lagging behind, versus areas north of the Henday, this is not really a concern, right? They've been built out for many years, and these are not the issues that people are concerned about there. So I feel like this ends up alienating people a little bit from their riding, from their representatives. potentially hurting things like voter turnout and engagement because people are not going to feel as connected or represented by their riding. When you're looking a little west, so in terms of that cutoff, like I mentioned, north and south of Henday, between Edmonton, Ellerslie and Edmonton South, Gateway, Boulevard, and Calgary Trail is kind of used as the boundary, which I think visually it makes sense. Even, the physical distance between those communities makes sense, but I think the communities east and west of Gateway are actually much closer in identity in terms of the age of these communities, in terms of what they look like, compared to those that are north and south. And again, I know the main challenge here is balancing population.
Let me stop. I want to finish this conversation here.
Mr. Chair.
As long as you're both on the same page. Okay, sorry, continue.
Yep, of course. So when it comes to the communities that are east and west of Gateway Boulevard, I think those are actually much closer in identity and kind of, we're thinking about the idea of representation in a community as compared to those that are north and south. And so even the Edmonton-Ellerslie boundaries also include, some of those neighborhoods just north of Anthony Henday as well. And I think some of these challenges are also quite difficult because of the northern boundaries of these ridings, like Edmonton Mill Woods being cut off at White Mud makes a lot of sense. I think that's exactly where it should be. And then when it comes to Edmonton Meadows, it's kind of stuck in that northeast corner, and you can't really do much besides cut it out where the population kind of works. So I understand some of the challenges that come with how we're dividing up the southeast, but I just don't feel like these areas that are kind of getting tacked on feel like they're being represented or are of the same identity as everything that is south of that. It feels quite distinct and different. Crossing south of Anthony Henday is like very distinctly moving into what you would consider Ellerslie and into those newer communities. And when it comes to the naming of some of these ridings as well, I think it's kind of the same issue with some of that identity. So like at the moment now we have Edmonton Southwest, Edmonton South, Edmonton Southeast. We're kind of hitting all the directions on the compass, but not really representing some of those communities. And when it comes to areas like the Southwest, I think there could be names that make sense, like Edmonton Windermere, for example. I think that area of the city is identified as Windermere by people throughout the city. Edmonton South, maybe something like Edmonton Heritage Valley. But when I look at the Southeast, it kind of comes back to the same issue that I don't even know what I would call it. Because the areas that are north of Henday, if you kind of use those names, I don't feel like that would represent all the development in newer areas that are moving further and further south, and even a little to the east, including that little cutout of Laurel that's included in there as well. And in the future, who knows what that could become? That could become kind of its own Windermere in terms of where it's located geographically. It's very similar to when Windermere started to develop. And today, I think that's what that area of the city is known as, versus right now, we don't really know what the Southeast is going to be. And so when it comes to kind of concerns with growth and development, I think that also applies to the rest of the city as well. Development is going to keep continuing further and further south. We're seeing the roadways get developed more and more. That 41st Ave is going to be completely built out. 17th Street is going to get built out further south. And I think we can expect development to continue and population to continue to grow in those areas as well. So I also have a bit of concern where the way the boundaries are drawn up now,
No, just wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, just to wrap it up. So just with the concern that by the time this comes into effect, maybe it's already going to feel like it's lagging behind, and these areas have continued to grow, especially when it is south of Edmonton. And even the mature areas, like I'm sure many people have mentioned, the city's really pushing a lot of infill and redevelopment. So it seems like this population growth is only going to continue, and by the time this is implemented, it's already going to feel like we need to update it again at that point.
Okay, you've made several points.
Sure.
Do you have a proposed map?
So unfortunately,
articulates what you are suggesting?
So I don't have a direct suggestion in terms of what the change would be. I think, as I mentioned, the difficulty really is because of the kind of northern and eastern boundaries that are very defined. I know it becomes a challenge of what the populations look like. Because I don't think if you took those kind of the few neighborhoods that are in Ellerslie and in the new southeast that are just north of Henday, I don't think the population's enough there to make it its own riding. But just, I guess my concern is it really does feel like a very distinct difference, things that are north and south of Anthony Henday. And when it comes to the idea of effective representation and kind of thinking of that, I feel like that's just where, I feel like that's missing for those kind of communities.
Okay, any questions, starting with Mr. Clark?
Oh, boy. Yeah, it's a big challenge. This is very, very helpful, though, because where possible, we've tried to respect community league boundaries, but I'm realizing here that we've cut Laurel in half. And I do hear you on the Henday. I'll look again. In the last round, we had many different iterations, and I just recall that the southeast corner of Edmonton is about 220,000 population, divides neatly into 4. What I'm hearing is we may not have drawn the boundaries quite right. So 220 divided by 4 is 55,000, so that's pretty much right what we're looking for. But what I'm hearing is try to maybe restructure things a little bit, and to the degree possible, north and south of Henday is an important barrier.
Yeah, I think it's a very distinct barrier, and one that, like I've grown up in this area my entire life, and I feel like if you ask anybody throughout any of these ridings, like that really is the distinct kind of line. As to the west, like 91, and the north, White Mud, and the east Henday are very defined. I think that kind of box is how people identify this area of the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Martin?
Thank you. And your primary critique, as it were, is that we have not respected communities of interest as much as you would wish for, which is fair comment. I draw your attention to my estimate of the population in this current interim map for Edmonton Southwest. My estimate of the population north of the Henday is 20,000.
You mean just in the southeast?
North of the Henday.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is along 50th Street, south of the Henday.
Yeah.
So there are 2 large blocks of residential populations. Ellerslie is starting to develop from east to west as Main Street. It's not entirely there yet. Of course, we've got the big freeway blocking it to some extent. But nonetheless, there's a huge amount of growth south of the Henday. And admittedly, it may not feel like the same communities that are much more long established north of the Henday. But the population growth in the Mill Woods district or region has been very, very large. We've heard from the constituency manager of Edmonton Meadows this morning about the difficulties or what, we play the thought experiment. You're at 53,000. If you wanted to have more, which would it be? Would you want the northern bit to put those communities back together, or do you want the southern bit to put those communities back together? And he wasn't sure which way to go, nor are we. So you know, this whole area is very difficult to connect together coherently.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so new.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Sampson?
Thank you for your presentation, and lots of information there. I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, so if you,
Evans?
I was really interested in looking at Edmonton Ellerslie, which has a population, at least on our numbers, of 82,000 and change. And comparing it to the proposed Edmonton Southeast, which brings it down to 52,000, 53,000. And I was specifically drawn to Crawford Plains, in that we've actually added all of Crawford Plains into the proposed. So assuming that, the the fact that you live in Crawford Plains, and now we've included all of Crawford Plains into this, I would have thought you'd have been ecstatic. And then we took out half of Laurel, and nobody likes Laurel anyways, right?
Yeah.
But we took out half of Laurel. That I could understand if you said, hey, my best friend is in Laurel, now you've taken him out or her out. But you didn't mention that. And all we've done is take out Ellerslie, Summerside, and Orchard to move some of that population out. The rest is exactly the same. So if it was connected before, wouldn't it be connected now?
Well, so as I mentioned, even with the current boundaries, so I think it just went along Millwoods Road, so it kind of cut that little north section almost in half, the previous boundaries. I also feel like that was not the best representation. Like it was kind of the same issue of that north-south divide of, you know, the identity of Ellerslie versus the identity of these more Millwoods areas. So I actually had kind of the same concern or same issue with that. And so now when we're seeing like a new proposal of boundaries, this kind of southeast area, like as you mentioned, we're seeing development across Ellerslie Road, and as 17th Street gets built a little more as well, I think we're going to see continued development, you know, on that southeast side as well, like just below where Edmonton Meadows is. And so those areas all feel very different in identity and, you know, the challenges they're going to have, and specifically just the age of those communities compared to everything in the north. So I think I would have had the same concerns with the previous boundaries as well, but
Okay.
I couldn't do too much about that, so,
But that makes sense now.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
I understand.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Just for everyone's benefit,
Sure.
We are technically supposed to be concluded our afternoon session now at 4:20. And we have to come back in an hour and 10 minutes for the evening session. And we have 4 more presenters. So, I'm going to restrict the questions. The questions are getting way too prolonged, and so it's not the presenter's fault, it's the people on this. We like to hear the sound of our own voice. So, Nicholas Rubottom. So it's going to be 1 question per side. So flip a coin. Sorry, please identify yourself and tell us what electoral district you are from and which one you want to comment on.
For sure. My name's Nicholas Rubottom. I'm an affordable housing consultant and the former executive director of infill development in Edmonton Association. So I have a housing background. I live in Edmonton Strathcona riding. My main commentary today is going to be talking about the central ridings in the city, the 6 that are being proposed to be consolidated into 5, as well as just the idea of hybridized ridings, the urban versus rural, and sort of effects that can have on the representation that we see in our ridings. So thank you so much to the Commission for the opportunity to speak today. I speak today as a consultant actively working in the space of housing and the former executive director of IDEA, Infill Development in Edmonton Association. My work is involved supporting affordable housing, redevelopment, and neighborhood scale initiatives across a wide range of communities. My intention today is to not oppose fair redistribution. I know you have a very difficult job ahead of you. It's just to demonstrate that assessing population growth without considering growth modality can lead to premature consolidation in Edmonton's urban center and increased reliance on hybrid ridings, both of which weaken effective representation over time. So that's a piece that I would like to talk about. Population growth in Edmonton's mature neighborhoods is increasing, not decreasing. While that growth occurs at a slower rate, it is sustained, infill-driven, and produces stable communities with shared functional needs. Reading slower growth as stagnation or as evidence that these areas are being hollowed out may misinterpret what is actually happening. Growth in mature neighborhoods occurs through redevelopment, gentle density, and reinvestment. It accumulates over time rather than appearing all at once. That distinction between how fast growth occurs and how growth occurs is central to understanding where representation pressure will emerge over the next boundary cycle of 8 years. To ground this, I'll offer a brief example from my professional work. I was recently requested to provide an early stage consult on a feasibility level housing project located in one of Edmonton's urban center ridings. It is a medium scale redevelopment project that sits entirely within an existing mature neighborhood, Strathcona area of the city. What stands out is not the scale of the project. It wouldn't move the dial very much population-wise in and of itself, but the nature of the work required. Even at this early stage, it involves zoning considerations, alignment with city plan objectives, engagement with the surrounding community, and anticipating future public funding pathways. So basically, the community needs to support those projects. This is how population growth occurs in mature neighborhoods. It is incremental, policy-driven, and front-loaded in terms of predictability, coordination, and effort. From a year-to-year population perspective, a single project like this doesn't move the dial much, but taken together, these projects reflect a broader pattern, the normalization of sustained growth that introduces residents who are likely to remain in these neighborhoods for years to come. That sustained growth gradually expands the local property tax base and supports collective neighborhood needs such as infrastructure renewal, transit, and local services. That relationship is most effective when the neighborhoods within a riding share similar functional needs and are at compatible stages in their life cycle. When that alignment exists, an elected representative can advocate consistently for reinvestment priorities that benefit the riding as a whole. When it doesn't, those same gains become harder to translate into outcomes that feel equitable or responsible across the riding. This is why the composition of a riding matters as much as the population. I would call it kind of modality in addition to growth as a consideration. When representation in the urban center is consolidated too early, population pressure does not disappear, it's just displaced. The result is twofold. First, core ridings composed of mature neighborhoods will reflect meaningful population increases long before the next redistribution cycle, leaving urban residents structurally underrepresented. At the same time, those areas are absorbing more people and more policy complexity. Second, hybrid boundary solutions become a release valve of sorts, whether between rural and urban communities or within cities where the neighborhoods might have competing interests, competing functional needs are being combined, so more of an implicit representation of hybridization. These configurations make it harder for a representative to advocate coherently and consistently over time. Hybrid ridings may appear efficient on paper, but in practice, they combine communities that require different policy priorities, different investment sequencing, and different forms of representation. This matters because growth in Edmonton's mature neighborhoods is not accidental. City policy explicitly supports infill and reinvestment as a core growth strategy, and that direction is being operationalized through zoning reform, redevelopment, and sustained public and private investment in the urban center. Provincial tools, such as the Community Revitalization Levy, reflect long-term confidence from the province in that approach. Representation should be aligned with where growth is occurring and how it is occurring, not solely with where it has already appeared in headline population counts. And I know this is something that you know, and that's why this is not so much a criticism or a specific thing that I think you should do in a specific place. I just felt it was very important that I come and say, please make sure that you're considering representation as part of population growth. And I'm really inspired and happy to hear that this seems to be something that's front of mind for you. In closing, population growth in Edmonton's mature neighborhoods is increasing, not decreasing. That growth is sustained, infill-driven, and produces stable communities with shared functional needs. Interpreting this pattern as decline has led to proposed consolidation in the urban center that does not necessarily align with how growth is actually occurring. My first recommendation, to give some recommendations, would be that representation in Edmonton's urban center should be maintained in a manner that reflects both the direction and the modality of growth, specifically by retaining the existing 6 urban center ridings rather than consolidating them into 5. And my second observation is more of an observation. It concerns the broader system effect. When hybrid boundary solutions are used to manage population pressures, unintended consequences could occur. Whether through the creation of explicit rural urban hybrid ridings or implicit hybrid ridings where mature neighborhoods are combined with maybe more suburban prioritized areas as well, competing functionally sorry, let me start that again. Implicit hybrids where mature neighborhoods and suburban areas have competing functionality within a single riding, making effective representation more difficult to sustain over time. Thank you for the opportunity to share this perspective, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rubottom. This side, any questions? One question.
I'll just ask this, how long?
This is Clark.
How new is the infill, and, you know, these policies, I guess, so have they started to bear fruit already, or is this sort of a point forward?
I think so. Like the idea as an organization when they started doing infill advocacy, that was about 14 years ago, and they already were existing as a grassroots group before that. The new zoning bylaw has now been around for almost coming up on 2 years. The impact that the new zoning bylaw has had is major redevelopment. I'm sure a lot of you have followed the news from last year in the summer. There was a lot of discussion over row housing and increase in density. Some people being very supportive of it, some people being less supportive of it. But the point of the matter is the densification is happening. We're seeing it happening in row housing. We're seeing it happen at mid-level density. We're seeing it happen in our downtown core. I live in Strathcona. I see density everywhere. I see infill everywhere. We constantly have projects that are popping up. The downtown area, I used to live there before. Mr. Shepherd, he mentioned Wicantoin. You're definitely seeing a lot there. Glenora, it's the same thing. West End Edmonton development is majorly shifting. Proof that the policy is still behind would be in our development of the district plans as a regulatory mechanism to manage development in Edmonton. By the time they got the zoning dealt with and got to the district plan level, they realized that their population modeling was way off base. It was way under. I can't speak to riding populations. My area of expertise when I used to work for IDEA was very much focused on looking at it from that municipal perspective. But we were so far behind where we thought we would be. By the time we actually were debating the policy was already redundant. So in what I guess I'm saying to you is I'm not trying to challenge your prescription of any specific riding. I know it's a really hard balance between population growth versus population modality. The biggest concern, the thing that really flagged me and kind of prompted me to speak, was actually the consolidation of the 6 ridings to the 5. And the big piece behind that is I wanted to make sure that the core ridings really represented the shift, the municipal shift in priorities, growth priorities for our city. And I feel there's so much emphasis on the downtown core that there needs to be that electoral representation happening, and that partnerships that we need to foster between the province to actually get these changes happening needs that representation to be in the downtown center. So that was a big piece for me.
Okay, any questions on this side?
Oh, good. Do you have a-
No, thank you for your presentation.
If we get it wrong, you will be one of the most empathetic individuals out there for us, right?
I have been, well, I ran for municipal office last year, so or last election cycle, and definitely from just the door knocking and the experience of engaging with residents, I know how difficult it is to please everyone. It's not possible. All I hope, and it seems like it's being demonstrated just in the way that you're engaging with the speakers today, I just hope there's a lot of mindful consideration and that it's not just about the numbers, and it seems to be the case, so I really appreciate the work that you're doing there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Our next presenter on the list is Raheen Deal. Nope, nope, okay. Tanya Kashner?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and just tell us what electoral division you are in and which ones you want to comment on.
Sure.
My name is Tanya Kiner, and I live in the Ritchie community, currently Edmonton Strathcona riding. And I want to speak about the proposal to consolidate 6 ridings in the Edmonton urban core, as well as the boundaries of Edmonton Strathcona.
Okay.
So I'm speaking today as a citizen because I want to ensure that Alberta's new electoral boundaries provide fair and effective representation for my city and my community. Like many others, I want to start with some thanks because I can only appreciate how complex it has been for you to date and will continue to be. So thank you for taking up this complicated task of recommending changes to Alberta's electoral boundaries. Given the growth in Edmonton and city residents' distinct needs, challenges, and demographics that differ from those of neighboring municipalities, I really appreciate your recommendation to add a new electoral division in Edmonton. I am, however, concerned about the proposal to consolidate 6 electoral divisions in the urban centre into 5. The Commission's interim report states that population growth in these areas has been lower than the rest of the city and that population numbers in these areas are below the provincial average. You know, this feels contradictory to what I see happening in my community and other communities in Edmonton's urban core. And it doesn't appear to incorporate the impacts that Edmonton's focus on urban densification and their growth plan aims will have. I've witnessed incredible growth and densification in my community. Single-family homes are replaced with duplexes, skinny homes, both of which have legal basement suites to help with mortgage. Sometimes single-family homes are being replaced with a 4, 6, or even an 8-plex in my community. I see the growth of garden suites and garage suites, which is a trend that I think will probably continue. So as a result, the same lot that used to host and house an older couple is now housing upwards of 8 to 16 people. Many of the 1950s homes on my street, for example, have legal basement suites, and I see population density increasing in these rentals as well. So in the past, many of these spaces were rented by 1 or 2 university students. Today, I see families of 4 occupying the same space, many looking for safe and low-cost housing that is centrally located because of its proximity to transportation and other services. As I think you heard from the last speaker, much of this growth is linked to zoning bylaw changes that are meant to encourage densification in Edmonton. So in 2024, Edmonton made bylaw changes that support higher density in mature neighborhoods. The city plans to accommodate a full 50% of new residential growth through infill with existing areas, and it's off to a strong start in meeting this target. So the implications of these fairly recent zoning bylaw changes, I think, are just beginning to be felt and visible in my neighborhood, and I do believe they will be amplified as the developments approved in 2024-2025 become finished and available for rent and purchase. And I think the impact will be significant population growth in the urban core neighborhoods. And I really feel like this growth needs to be recognized, partly because density in urban core ridings creates unique challenges, and it's really critical that residents in Ritchie and in other communities in Edmonton's core have fair representation to address these challenges. Density brings a kind of, I think the last speaker called it policy complexity, and certainly there are a lot of issues that arise with density that folks need representation to address. And I think collapsing 6 ridings in the core into 5 works against, the principle of fair representation because of these complex issues, and because the resulting impacts would in part lead to ridings such as Edmonton, Glenora, Riverview, which is 12.3% over the provincial average. In addition to concern about collapsing 6 of those urban core ridings into 5. I wanted to speak more specifically about the Edmonton Strathcona riding proposed boundaries. And I feel like these boundaries don't align with the geographical boundaries and that they divide up the community of Ritchie. As a resident in Ritchie, living west of Mill Creek Ravine, I rarely travel east for work, recreation, health services, or entertainment. Like many of my neighbors, I'm more closely connected to the university, medical centers, restaurants, and services that are west of the ravine. The Ritchie Community Hall sits in this little patch that has been carved off and separated from other Ritchie residents who are on the west side of 99th Street. So this is a gathering place where Ritchie residents come together to talk about issues, and to have us then joining as constituents who will have different representatives is problematic. So my suggestion for this is to consider the community of interest for Ritchie residents and align with the natural geographical boundary, in particular to follow Mill Creek Ravine from 82nd Ave to 63rd Ave. So there's a little patch there that has been kind of carved off that I believe divides Ritchie in two, using 99th Street as the current boundary. So to conclude, I think the consolidation of 6 urban core electoral divisions into 5 might raise some equity concerns and certainly might not provide an opportunity for residents there to have fair representation given the complexity of the issues that they face. And I also believe that the Commission could tweak the Edmonton Strathcona proposed boundary in order to ensure that the community of Ritchie is not divided.
So are you, just so I'm clear, take away 99th Street as the eastern boundary and move it over to Mill Creek?
Yep.
Okay, okay, thank you. Questions on this side?
Go ahead, Martin. Thank you very much.
Dr. Martin.
I note in passing, and you can see it on the map as well, the population figures for Centre, Highlands, Gold Bar, and Strathcona are all below the provincial mean. And that will accommodate some growth, to be sure. Even at 15% growth, you'd still be at 60. Edmonton Strathcona would be 63-ish, let's say. But I just note this in passing. I wanted to focus on the Ritchie, Hazeldean, Argyle piece. If we use Mill Creek as a boundary, which is plausible enough, that's 9,000 persons. Where are we going to put it? We're going to put it into Strathcona ostensibly, which makes Edmonton Strathcona 61,000, and Edmonton Gold Bar becomes the smallest population in the city. So we struggle, rough and ready balance, I think, left us with a very difficult decision about what to do with those 3 communities, Ritchie, Hazeldean, and Argyle. So that's why we ended up as we did. Mm-hmm. So I take it you're not proposing, or are you proposing, that we just take Ritchie and leave Hazeldean and Argyle? Because they have less connectivity by roadway across Mill Creek than Ritchie does.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, my real concern is about Ritchie being divided. So, you know, my proposal to follow the geographical natural boundary of Mill Creek Ravine was really because when I get together with fellow residents, many of them are coming from west of 99th Street, that part of Ritchie, and we gather east of 99th Street in that part of Ritchie, and I'm imagining to myself, you know, the kinds of difficulties when we're then as a community trying to propose you know, some of our issues and concerns be brought forward to our elected officials, and we've got 2 rather than 1. So I haven't seen the numbers, I haven't seen the data, the methodologies, so I unfortunately think that's your difficult task, but I really would appreciate considering that you know, folks in Ritchie really are a shared community of interest as well.
I will say, West Ritchie is, according to the planning folk at the city, it belongs to Strathcona, not to Ritchie. I used to live in Ritchie, and it was annoying that they said that. But that's 99th Street is, from the city's point of view, a boundary.
Oh, they should tell it to the community hall, because we're
Well, I
about to
know.
order a new
I
sign.
absolutely, I understand it.
On this side?
but West of Ritchie is deemed to be part
Yeah, I
of
got-
the
I have a question.
Strathcona Community League's turf.
Okay, Mr. Evans?
So you're in Ward 8, is that right?
Yeah, I live in that little patch of Ritchie that's just south of 82nd Ave and east of, are you asking about my city board?
Yes.
Yeah. Michael Jans is my counselor.
Okay. And so you're suggesting that the boundaries that we should be changing to is basically to fit within your ward boundary, your city ward boundary of 8?
Yeah, I was suggesting really following that ravine, and in part because of the way people in my community like live and where we work and where we go for services and the things that we discuss and are concerned about. I mean, it's really, we're quite connected to that kind of university, White Ave sort of area, and many of us don't go east of the ravine for health services or for other services. So I'm proposing following that ravine as a kind of natural divider.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your stick-to-itiveness and staying here all afternoon. Our next presenter, I believe our last for the day, is Maureen Towns. Not for the day, for the afternoon. Good afternoon. Please identify the electoral district you're from and which you want to comment on.
Good afternoon. I guess I just want to start my timer, so
Oh,
you've got one, I'm sure.
yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Towns, and I live in the Strathcona Sherwood Park riding. And I would like to thank the members of the commission for undertaking this difficult work and appreciate that Strathcona County, including Sherwood Park, has been
Could you identify your riding again?
Strathcona Sherwood Park.
Okay.
I have a feeling I left out the Sherwood Park before.
No, you didn't. It's my misunderstanding. Okay.
Okay, it's directly,
Too many Strathconas in Edmonton.
there are, well, and we're not in Edmonton. We're,
Edmonton expropriated your name, I know.
well, I don't, way too many Scots here. Anyway, and I appreciate for the most part that Sherwood Park and Strathcona County have been recognized as a cohesive municipal entity and has not been included in Edmonton ridings, which certainly has happened in, I don't know in the past provincially, but federally it has been. I'm a retired lawyer, and I was a school trustee and the board chair of Elk Island Public Schools from 2001 to 2004. I've lived in Sherwood Park for over 40 years. Since 1989, I've lived in the Heritage Hills area, which is east of Clover Bar Road and west of Highway 21, south of Baseline Road and north of Y Road, well north of Y Road. In 1989, we were considered to be the far northeast of Sherwood Park, and now we're kind of not quite in the middle, but we're no longer the far northeast. There are three significant changes proposed for the Strathcona Sherwood Park riding, and they are the Heritage Hills neighborhood, in which I live, would be removed from the riding and added to Sherwood Park. An area south of Y Road and west of Range Road 231 or Clover Bar Road, when it's in Sherwood Park, would be removed from the riding and added to Sherwood Park. And half of the city of Beaumont, or much of the part of the city of Beaumont and part of Leduc County would be added to the riding. I'll specifically address population, community of interest, and clear and understandable boundaries. By removing Heritage Hills, the difficulty here is obviously the push-pull of population. And it's like a spider web. You pull one and the whole thing jiggles. And in my view, the problem starts by removing Heritage Hills from the riding and putting it into Sherwood Park. The interim proposal, in an attempt to balance the population, would then extend Strathcona-Sherwood Park considerably southward to include Beaumont. And while drawing electoral boundaries is largely, not completely, a numbers game, there are, of course, other considerations. The proposal that's been put forward seems to ignore the growth in population that's already occurring in areas of Strathcona-Sherwood Park, notably south of Y Road and in the community of Ardrossan, which at one point was like so far away, couldn't believe that people actually went there, and now it's a common occurrence for us to be in Ardrossan. It also ignores the significant growth happening in the Sherwood Park riding, notably north of Highway 16 and west of Highway 21 in the Cambrium neighborhood, and I'm sure you've heard about it. It's inefficient, in my view, to balance the population by removing Heritage Hills and including half of the city of Beaumont. It will make it very difficult for an MLA to represent the riding and to develop effective relationships with municipal and school board representatives. And what would happen is 2 new municipalities would be added, not completely, but they would be there, as well as 2 additional school divisions, being Black Gold School Division and St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Separate School Division. With respect to communities of interest, in my view, this is the most important aspect as we try to juggle the population. I'm concerned that the configuration would result in a significant loss in the ability of the MLA to address the communities, the issues unique to these communities. And when you look at Strathcona, Sherwood Park, Strathcona County generally, and Beaumont, their histories are completely different. Sherwood Park started as a bedroom community in the 50s. Beaumont started as its own community in the late 1800s. I'm not exactly sure of what the dates look like. There is also the issue of the Francophone community in Beaumont, which is not similar at all in Sherwood Park, Strathcona County. And frankly, I think it would be a huge disservice to Beaumont to cut them up and include them in Strathcona County, Sherwood Park, although that is their brief to make, but that is my observation. That's not that we have anything against Beaumont. We think it's lovely. I'm just thinking that. The other thing is understandable and clear boundaries is set out in 14 sub E. And the boundaries contained in the proposal are understandable only so far as they relate to population and trying to equalize population. The removing Heritage Hills from Strathcona County, as you can see on the map, you see Highway 21, and a bit to the west or left of that, there's Clover Bar Road, which is all squiggly, and then it goes over to Highway 21. That doesn't make sense when you look at the map. So to me, that is not a clear and understandable boundary. The other boundary that's odd, in my view, is and part of it already exists now, but is in the area south of Y Road. And the proposal includes adding to that area, but my recommendation is that Y Road be the southern boundary. There is significant growth in that neighborhood, in the Salisbury Village neighborhood, and it would make the boundary clearer, more understandable, and address the population issue. So in summary, to me, the biggest issue is Beaumont. And if we kept Heritage Hills in Strathcona Sherwood Park, added the area south of Y Road, and paid attention to the increase in population, in my view, that would address the population issues. The Strathcona Sherwood Park riding has worked well since 2017, when the boundaries were last redrawn, as I understand it. And the biggest change has been in population and growth, which I believe can be addressed in the ways I've suggested.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Dr. Martin is chomping at the bit to have a question.
It's yours.
The southern boundary of Sherwood Park is the urban service area boundary. We didn't invent that jiggly line, although we did add Hillshire. But other than that, we didn't touch it. I take your point about Heritage Hills, which has been pressed on us by perhaps 75 submissions. The area north of the Yellowhead, of course, we're starting to see some Cambrian development up there.
Yes.
Brenner is in the other riding.
In Fort Saskatchewan, Vegreville.
Yes, it is. And it's projected to be 70 or 80,000 in 50 years' time. So who knows how rapidly it will be developed. They've cut the ground open, but they haven't done much more so far. I really wanted to ask you about the county, about Strathcona Sherwood Park per se. If we, without the Beaumont piece, which you say was very ill-advised, then the county is much lower, significantly lower in population, which on the one hand, people could say, well, that's okay, why not do it? But, if you wanted to add more bits, would you take a chunk north of the Yellowhead and add it to this particular riding?
Oh, yes, for sure. Like, it makes, Bremer makes a lot of sense. My only concern with that is you're tugging a line which is going to have an effect elsewhere. But that to me, if you were looking at it, really significantly adding population, which, okay, 70,000 in 50 years, but we really kind of only need to worry, so to speak, about the next 8 to 10, right? So I think that's an opportunity that is there. And with respect to Heritage Hills, I'm actually not personally that busted about it, except as it relates to then messing up the population numbers. Because to me, that's kind of the first domino. Oh, we've taken all this population out. Now what do we do? Oh, let's add Beaumont. And I'm sorry, I'm sounding flippant about the process, and I don't mean to. But
you should hear us talk about it.
Oh,
You might not be as far off as you think.
just invite me. So that is that's kind of my view on Heritage Hills.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on this side?
No questions, but thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for sticking with us.
I would just echo Justice Miller's comments before, be careful what you wish for. We might invite you into this.
Oh, I don't know. I'm retired. I got time.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And we will close these hearings till 5:30. We have 35 minutes for dinner.